Chapter 443. Thousands of golden sword chi burst out from the Path Technique scroll, and the Path Technique scroll completely crumbled in the void. It was a Path Technique scroll that could only be used once. The extremely sharp sword chi pierced through the void as if it was cutting the world into thousands of pieces. When it collided with the tens of thousands of lightning bolts, it broke through the layers of lightning bolts and shot towards the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was shocked. The endless golden sword light flashed in front of him, giving him the illusion that a peerless master of the sword Tao was attacking him. Roar! The middle-aged man roared. Suddenly, a bright ball of lightning surged out from his body. Like a cocoon, he was wrapped in the ball of lightning to protect his body. Then, he flew backwards. He wanted to dodge the endless golden sword chi, but no matter how fast his lightning escape technique was, it was a bit too late. It was a rain of golden swords, a sea of swords. It covered the sky and the earth, like a raging wave on the sea, and instantly drowned the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man who was drowned by the countless golden sword chi didn't die. Instead, the middle-aged man's angry roar came from the dazzling sword chi. At this time, Dongfang Chen saw the scrolls burst out with unparalleled sword chi and trapped the middle-aged man. Then, he took out another scroll from his magic treasure pouch. Without any hesitation, he directly opened the scroll in his hand. Suddenly, a green light rushed out from the scroll and enveloped Dongfang Chen. The green light was like a wave of water, but it wasn't dazzling. Dongfang Chen, who was inside, seemed to be wrapped in a big bubble. Swoosh! The big bubble that enveloped Dongfang Chen suddenly flashed with a bright light. The void shook for a moment, and then, the light dissipated. Dongfang Chen had already disappeared into the void. Furious thunder rips the heavens and earth. Inside the endless golden sword chi, the middle-aged man's angry roar came out. Then, a terrifying energy fluctuation came out from the sword chi. Rumble, 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 as if there were thousands of thunderbolts roaring. The whole world was shaking violently. Terrifying lightning bolts as thick as a child's arm broke through the countless golden sword chi, tore apart the endless sword chi, and struck out from the sword formation. Countless golden sword chis were shattered, and the sharp sword light dissipated in the void by the power of thunder and lightning. A terrifying figure surrounded by lightning walked out of the shattered sword light. Ha! The middle-aged man let out a low roar. He was extremely angry, and his hair stood on end. His clothes were tattered and full of holes, and his shirt was hanging on his body like a piece of cloth. Just now, trapped in the countless sword chi, he encountered great danger. Of sword chi. His body was covered with sword wounds, and some places were already bleeding, which made of him of anger. He was actually injured by the hands of an unknown kid, which made him feel ashamed and angry. Damn guy, if I meet you again. The middle-aged man gritted his teeth, his eyes were red, and his body was filled with murderous intent. He had already felt the vibration of the void. The little guy had already used some kind of power to cross the void, and he did not know where he was teleported to. The middle-aged man was angry and resentful. Finally, he controlled the thunder and lightning escape light and flew out of the mountain. Dongfang Chen was refining the primordial spirit and nascent soul of the old man of the Beitang family in the north, and finally came out. He, who had entered the demonic path, cultivated a rare forbidden technique, and his cultivation had broken through to the void controlling realm. However, what Dongfang Chen did not know was that Ji Yufei had also broken through to the void controlling realm. If the two strong people met, there would definitely be a fierce battle. At the same time, in the Taishen sect, because Ji Yufei had come out of seclusion, those old monsters who had gathered in the Taishen sect were all extremely excited. The strange phenomenon that appeared on the Green Spirit Peak might be that Ji Yufei was using a secret method to contact the powerful figure of the demon race. These old monsters who were at the end of their lifespans wanted to extend their lifespans, and they were going crazy. This was especially true for a few old monsters who were at the end of their lifespans. Ji Yufei also knew that if he did not hand over the longevity grass now, he was afraid that he would really be eaten alive by these terrible old monsters. It should be known that these old monsters had lived for thousands of years, and their lifespans were at the end of their lifespans. If it were not for the fact that they were somewhat afraid of Taoist Ku Rong, they would have directly broken the door when Ji Yufei was in seclusion, rushed into the cave residence, and pulled out Ji Yufei. After Ji Yufei came out of the cave residence, he did not say anything. He directly handed the jade box that contained the longevity grass to Taoist Shentian, then turned around and walked into the cave residence. This hot potato was finally given away. In this way, the green spirit peak could finally be quiet. After Ji Yufei handed over the longevity grass, he finally breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He did not care that those old monsters outside were tormenting him. There was only one longevity grass in the jade box, but there were many old monsters in the three great Taoist sects who were at the end of their lifespans. Ji Yufei couldn't be bothered with how they would distribute the longevity grass. There was still a stalk of longevity grass in Ji Yufei's inner world. He had only taken out a stalk of longevity grass that he had already plucked and consumed. As for the other 9-leaf longevity grass, he did not intend to hand over it. The longevity grass contained a huge amount of life essence and was simply a life-saving grass. Just one drop of this kind of spiritual juice was enough to revive the dead. Although Ji Yufei did not understand the path of pill concocting and did not know the detailed effects of the longevity grass, he knew that no matter how serious his injuries were, as long as he still had a breath left, he would be able to recover after taking the longevity grass. A huge amount of life essence was more useful than any panacea. Of course, if those cultivators with profound attainments in pill concocting knew that Ji Yufei directly took the longevity grass, they would probably jump up and scold Ji Yufei for wasting a heavenly gift. Of the 3 longevity grass obtained from the virtual sky world, one was taken by Yanga of the Danding School in the northern region to refine pills, one was given to Daoist Shentian, and the last one was kept by Ji Yufei for his own use. After handing over the longevity grass, Ji Yufei directly returned to his cave residence and continued to meditate on the mark of the great path that was imprinted in his heart. He did not know that there were already 12 young cultivators who, under the arrangement of the head of the sect, Daoist Shentian, had entered the Green Spirit Peak. He also did not know that he had become the new head of the Green Spirit Peak. According to the rules of the Taishen sect, only peerless masters of the void controlling realm could become the head of a branch. The head of a branch was actually a kind of deterrent. If the cultivation level of the head was too low, how could the disciples be convinced? It should be known that the world of cultivation was a world where the strong were respected. Only with great power could everyone be deterred. However, Ji Yufei's intention to continue to meditate on the Supreme Great Path could not continue in less than 3 days. On the evening of the 2nd day, the sky was filled with sunset clouds, and the afterglow of the setting sun illuminated the western world red. It was in this seemingly calm evening that the appearance of a person caused the entire Taishen sect to once again become a mess. That person came for Ji Yufei. Chapter 444. The bright moon illuminated the mountains and rivers, and the stars illuminated the world. The 9 peaks of Taishen, under the illumination of the moon and the stars, were picturesque. Clouds and mist lingered around the 9 peaks. From time to time, there was a flash of spiritual light, and the aura of celestial spirit floated. It was like a fairyland. Other than the occasional roar of a beast or two, the entire mountain was tranquil and peaceful. However, when the moon was in the middle of the sky and midnight came, a monstrous demonic aura suddenly surged from the west, breaking the peace between heaven and earth. The terrifying aura made all the birds and beasts in the Taishen Mountains tremble in fear. "Ha ha, brat, I can already feel your aura. Come out quickly." A loud laugh resounded through the world and spread for hundreds of miles, like the roar of a peerless demon. Swish, 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 more than a dozen beams of light immediately rushed out of Taishen Peak, which was surrounded by the 8 peaks. At the same time, beams of light from the other 8 peaks also shot up into the sky. Everyone in the Taishen sect was alarmed. "Who has come to my Taishen sect?" Immediately, Taoist Xuantian's voice sounded in the mountains, spreading through the sky and the earth, and into the ears of everyone on the 9 spirit peaks. The towering demonic aura came from the west, and in an instant, it shrouded a radius of hundreds of miles, covering the sky and the sun. The 9 peaks of Taishen were all shrouded by the terrifying demonic aura, and the world suddenly lost its color. A terrible aura spread out from the demonic aura, and all the cultivators who felt this aura were terrified. Taoist Shentian and the other cultivators of the void-controlling realm who had appeared in the northern land were even more horrified. That was because they already knew who had come. The powerful figure of the demon clan had really come. Taoist Shentian, Lin Outsang, Old Monster Shen Yuan, and the others had already faintly felt that something was wrong. This powerful figure of the demon clan had only just arrived, so where did Ji Yu Fei's longevity grass come from? Could it be that the longevity grass had always been on Ji Yu Fei's body? How did he do it? How could he hide the longevity grass in front of them without being discovered? It was really unbelievable. Ji Yu Fei, you stinking brat, quickly come out and follow me. The old tortoise's voice seemed to come from the 9 heavens, spreading to every inch of the void within a radius of hundreds of miles. The terrifying sound waves shook the world. Daoist Shentian and the other experts from the 3 great Daoist sects felt their ears buzzing as if dozens of bells were ringing in their ears. At this moment, even those who were in seclusion were startled awake. Ji Yu Fei was no exception. The restriction of the cave residents could not block the old turtle's voice. The old turtle's voice seemed to have a strange power that directly penetrated the cave residents and reached Ji Yu Fei's ears. This old tortoise. Ji Yu Fei, who was sitting in the cave abode, opened his eyes. 2 brilliant rays of light shot out from Ji Yu Fei's eyes and lit up the entire cave abode. Boom! A loud noise came from the top of the 9 Taishen peaks. The 9 spirit peaks shook violently, and endless runes and divine light appeared above the 9 Taishen peaks. Like silver snakes, they slithered in all directions. The old turtle had actually launched an attack against the great mountain shield matrix. The terrifying power of the attack was so powerful that it shook the heavens and the earth, and the mountains trembled. Several beams of light fell directly from the sky. Those with lower cultivation only felt the blood in their bodies roil. Although there was the great mountain shield matrix as a barrier, all the cultivators of the entire Taishen sect suffered a significant impact. Senior, please stop. Daoist Xuantian's voice sounded again. From his voice, it could be heard that he was a little anxious. Your Taishen sect really does have some tricks up its sleeve. I don't know who did this all those years ago. The old turtle's somewhat disdainful words came out from the demon clouds. He seemed to see something. The peerless masters of the 3 great Taoist sects were all riding the beams of light, standing in the sky above Taishen Peak. The disciples of the 9 peaks all rushed out, looking up at the sky with inexplicable horror. The dark green demonic cloud covered the sky and the earth, completely covering hundreds of miles of Taishen Mountain. The blow that the old turtle had just delivered had already activated the power of the mountain guarding matrix. A layer of transparent light shield, like an upside-down jade bowl, shrouded the 9 peaks of Taishen within a radius of hundreds of miles. The stars in the sky sprinkled down endless starlight, as if meteors were falling from the sky. The energy of the earth seeped out of the earth. The protective array was completely activated, connecting the sky and the earth, drawing in the power of the stars in the sky, and drawing in the energy of the earth. Such a matrix condensed the power of heaven and earth, and became one with the power of heaven and earth, drawing on the power of heaven and earth for its use. Its power was so great that even the old turtle, who had recovered to the cultivation of a demon god, would find it difficult to break it in a short time. Senior, please stop. We can talk things over. The foreheads of the elders of the Taishen sect were sweating, and they all shouted out loud. If they were attacked by this old demon a few more times, even if the matrix was not broken, the disciples of the 9 Taishen meridians with lower cultivation would most likely be injured. Quickly, remove this matrix and let me in. The old turtle could not really break through the great mountain shield matrix, so he did not attack again. However, he was already a little impatient. At the same time, the terrible demon clouds that shrouded hundreds of miles receded like the tide, all of them entering the body of the old turtle, and the terrible aura was converging. The people of the Taishen sect all breathed a sigh of relief. Daoist Shentian hurriedly transmitted his voice to the elders guarding the mountain gate, asking them to remove the matrix. The endless runes gradually disappeared into the void, and the light shield that shrouded the 9 Taishen peaks also dissipated. Senior, please enter Taishen Temple. Daoist Shentian led the various chiefs and elders to greet the old turtle. Shenyuan Old Monster and Lin Outsang also led their respective disciples, following behind Daoist Shentian and the other senior members of the Taishen sect. Most of the old monsters of the three great Daoist sects had witnessed the glory of the old turtle when the true demon of the northern land was born. They knew how powerful this old demon was, so they did not dare to be careless. The old turtle snorted coldly. He ignored Daoist Shentian and the elders of the three great Daoist sects, and directly disappeared into the void. Hiss! When everyone saw this, they all gasped. No one could see how the old turtle disappeared, not even Shenyuan Old Monster and Lin Outsang. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in shock. This kind of teleportation technique that allowed one to directly enter the void and disappear without a trace was the legendary teleportation technique. This kind of divine ability was a great divine ability that only appeared in the legend. In the history of the Tinglong continent, there were only records of immortals in myths and legends. For thousands of years, no one had actually seen immortals. In the ancient books of the major sects and factions, there were only a few words about immortals. However, all the cultivators in the world of cultivation believed that immortals existed. Daoist Shentian, Shenyuan Old Monster, and the others no longer had any doubts. This old demon was a demon god. When the demon race became an immortal, they became a demon god. The old tortoise had already entered the supreme mystery sect, but no one was able to catch any traces of the old tortoise. This was the terror of the demon god. He could suddenly appear beside someone and then kill them effortlessly. Whoosh! The old turtle's figure appeared in the sky above Green Spirit Peak. At this time, he had completely transformed into a human. He was a middle-aged man with a mighty appearance. It was really hard to imagine that the old turtle, who was like a peerless demon and acted according to his own preferences, would have an extraordinary appearance after transforming into a human. On Green Spirit Peak, a white figure stood in front of the door of the cave and looked up. Old turtle, long time no see. Why have you come to find me? Could it be that you were forced by that little monk to have nowhere to hide and want to hide here? Jiyu Fei smiled and looked up at the old turtle in the sky. Bah, bah, bah. That little monk was forced by me to have nowhere to hide, okay? Hurry up and come with me. The moment old tortoise saw Jiyu Fei, it immediately flew down from the sky. It grabbed Jiyu Fei's shoulder and soared into the sky, flying toward the west. You old turtle, can't you be a little more gentle? I'm a peerless master after all. Jiyu Fei said very unhappily. No matter who it was, if they were caught in the air like an eagle catching a chick, no one would be happy. Gentle my ass. The old turtle did not say anything and directly teleported out of Taishen Gate. Daoist Shentian and the other elders of the three major Taoist sects had not yet arrived at Green Spirit Peak when the old turtle and Jiyu Fei had already left the atmosphere of the 9 peaks of Taishen and arrived outside Taishen Gate. Teleportation was a great magical power that could only be performed by immortals. By the time Daoist Shentian, Old Monster Shenyuan, and the others discovered that the old turtle and Jiyu Fei had left Taishen Gate, the old turtle and Jiyu Fei had already disappeared. Why did this old demon want to take Jiyu Fei away? No one knew why the old turtle wanted to take Jiyu Fei away. They were all confused, but they were not worried about Jiyu Fei's safety. Jiyu Fei and the old turtle had an extraordinary friendship. That night, the commotion caused by the arrival of the old turtle could not be calmed down for a long time. A group of disciples was talking about this matter. A demon had actually appeared in Taishen Gate. This was something that had rarely happened in thousands of years. The elders and elders of the 3 major Taoist sects returned to Taishen Temple. Everyone felt ashamed or angry because they had been ignored by the other party. Because the other party really had the strength to ignore everyone present. A demon god had come to Taishen Gate. This was definitely a big event that could shake the entire world of cultivation. This news was difficult to block, and Taishen Gate did not order its disciples to keep it a secret. The upper echelons of the 3 major Taoist sects could already predict that Taishen Gate would once again become the focus of the entire world of cultivation. The sky was blue, and stars filled the sky. On a mountain peak thousands of miles away from Taishen Gate stood two figures. Old Turtle, don't give me any more riddles. Be straightforward. Why did you come to Taishen Gate to find me this time? If you don't make it clear, I won't leave. The two people on the top of the mountain were Jiyu Fei and the Old Turtle. Chapter 445. The bright moon shone high in the sky and the mountain whistled. Jiyu Fei and the Old Turtle stood on the mountain peak. Actually, I want to borrow something from you. The Old Turtle was a little hesitant, but in the end, he still told him the reason why he came to find Jiyu Fei. Jiyu Fei couldn't help being startled when he heard this. A strange expression appeared on his face as he said with some surprise, "Did I hear it wrong? You want to borrow something from me?" The Old Turtle glared at Jiyu Fei and said, "Can't I?" Back then, the Old Turtle wanted to talk about his awe-inspiring deeds. However, Jiyu Fei immediately interrupted him. "All right, what do I have that's worth borrowing?" Jiyu Fei knew that if he let the Old Turtle talk about his awe-inspiring deeds, he would definitely not stop for a few hours. Hee. In fact, it's not an important treasure. It's just the mountain and river cauldron in your inner world. The Old Turtle looked at Jiyu Fei with a smile and his eyes lit up. Mountain and river cauldron? Jiyu Fei jumped. The mountain and river cauldron was not an important treasure. This Old Turtle. How could he say that? Jiyu Fei was not a fool. He knew very well that even in the primitive times, the mountain and river cauldron was definitely a treasure. Even the great figures of the ancient times would go crazy for it. That's right. I want to borrow your mountain and river cauldron. The Old Turtle seemed a little excited. Jiyu Fei lowered his head and pondered for a while before saying, "We met in the virtual sky world. We're friends who have gone through life and death together. Since you asked, I can't not lend it to you. Then give it to me." The Old Turtle was very straightforward. He directly extended his hand in front of Jiyu Fei with an incomparably bright smile on his face. But Jiyu Fei wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He looked like he was in a dilemma. The bright smile on the Old Turtle's face immediately froze. He seemed to have fallen from heaven to hell in an instant. To tell you the truth, even if I wanted to lend the mountain and river cauldron to you, I wouldn't be able to. Jiyu Fei almost burst out laughing when he saw Old Tortoise's expression. However, he held it in and spoke to Old Tortoise in all seriousness. What's going on? Could it be that the mountain and river cauldron was stolen? The bright smile on the Old Turtle's face disappeared in an instant. It was replaced by anxiety and tightness, as if the person who had stolen the mountain and river cauldron was him. "No," Jiyu Fei answered. You stinky brat, are you messing with me?" The Old Tortoise was infuriated. It felt like this brat was messing with him. "I didn't tease you." Jiyu Fei shrugged and said innocently. Old Tortoise had really wronged him. Jiyu Fei was not lying. He really could not borrow it. "You're still denying it. Since the mountain and river cauldron is with you, why can't you borrow it?" The Old Tortoise was a little unhappy. "Brother, ever since the mountain and river cauldron entered my inner world, it has settled down there. There's nothing I can do if it refuses to come out," Jiyu Fei said helplessly. Old Tortoise frowned and asked in disbelief, "Haven't you refined the mountain and river cauldron yet?" "Refine?" Jiyu Fei could only smile bitterly. Even moving the mountain and river cauldron would take a lot of effort, let alone refining it. It was a rare supreme treasure. With Jiyu Fei's current cultivation, refining a rare supreme treasure was like an ant trying to swallow an elephant, unless a miracle happened. That's right, with your current cultivation. Old Tortoise looked up and down at Jiyu Fei and nodded. It was difficult to move a supreme treasure like the mountain and river cauldron, unless it was an ancient almighty. This is troublesome. Do I have to wait for thousands of years for this brat to refine the mountain and river cauldron before I can open that place? Old Tortoise muttered to himself. He seemed to have encountered a difficult problem. "I'll open my inner world. If you can take the mountain and river cauldron out, you can have it," Jiyu Fei said. He knew that Old Tortoise would never borrow the mountain and river cauldron from him unless there was something he could not solve. Rumble, A purple flame mark appeared between Ji Fei's eyebrows. A powerful wave of power surged from the mark and the void in front of him suddenly shook. Transparent ripples that were visible to the naked eye spread out from between Ji Fei's eyebrows like waves of water. Then, cracks appeared in the void in front of Ji Fei. The void shattered, and in the end, a hole about 3 meters in diameter appeared. Inside the hole was a small world, and in that small world was an ancient cauldron. The mountain and river cauldron? Old Tortoise was overjoyed. With the mountain and river cauldron, he could open that place. Legend had it that the place was a divine treasure trove with countless treasures. Even an expert like Old Tortoise, who was already an almighty since ancient times, was tempted by the legendary divine treasure trove and wanted to take it for himself. "Brat, do you mean what you said just now?" Old Tortoise was shocked and overjoyed. The mountain and river cauldron was right in front of him. "Of course. If you can take the mountain and river cauldron out of my inner world, I'll lend it to you," Ji Fei said to Old Tortoise in an extremely serious manner. "Hee. That's what you said." Old Tortoise chuckled and reached out his right hand to grab the small world inside the cave. After his big hand entered the small world, it quickly grew to the size of a hill and shrouded the ancient cauldron in the small world. The small world shook, but the cauldron did not move at all. Old Tortoise's big hand grabbed the cauldron and tried to take it out of Ji Fei's inner world. However, the cauldron was as heavy as 100,000 mountains and could not be moved at all. Old Tortoise exclaimed. He could not move the mountain and river cauldron. This was both within his expectations and outside of his expectations. The mountain and river cauldron was indeed extraordinary. Ji Fei could not help but be secretly shocked when he saw that Old Tortoise seemed to be unable to take the mountain and river cauldron out of his inner world. The mountain and river cauldron was indeed a rare treasure. Even Old Tortoise, whose cultivation had recovered to the immortal realm, could not move it. "I don't believe that I can't take it out." Old Tortoise roared and activated the power of the demon god with all his might. The big hand that grabbed the mountain and river cauldron desperately shrank. Rumble, the whole small world shook violently as if it was about to collapse. Ji Fei's body suddenly shook violently and the Embark palace between his eyebrows felt like it was about to explode. Old Tortoise's power could not move the mountain and river cauldron, but it shook Ji Fei's inner world. Ji Fei felt the world spinning and his vision turning black. His head felt like it was about to split open. It was as if the inner world in his Embark palace was about to be pulled out by Old Tortoise. "Stop! Old Tortoise!" Ji Fei's face was as white as paper and his body was on the verge of collapsing. His inner world was shaking and he had also suffered a great impact. Sigh. Seeing Ji Fei's pained expression, Old Tortoise could only sigh and withdraw his hand helplessly. Following that, Ji Fei's inner world also closed. He was drenched in sweat and felt like his body was about to collapse. It was as if he had fought with someone for 10 days and 10 nights and had exhausted his vitality. "This mountain and river cauldron is really strange," Old Tortoise said unwillingly. If he did not stop, Ji Fei's inner world would be damaged even if it did not collapse. The mountain and river cauldron seemed to have become one with Ji Fei's inner world. It was impossible to take it out from Ji Fei's inner world. In fact, Old Tortoise knew very well that even if the mountain and river cauldron was not in Ji Fei's inner world, it would still be difficult for him to move it. Although Old Tortoise's cultivation had recovered to the demon god realm and was as powerful as an immortal god, it was still difficult for him to move a supreme treasure. Ji Fei sat cross-legged on the ground, channeling his mystic arts and inhaling and exhaling spiritual energy. It took him almost an hour to recover. Then, he suddenly jumped up from the ground and threw a punch at the Old Tortoise, who was sitting with his legs crossed, biting a piece of dried grass and staring at the starry sky. No one knew what he was thinking. A bright aura rushed out from Ji Fei's fist and instantly lit up the heaven and earth. The void distorted and the earth trembled under his fist. F***CK. "You're murdering me for money." Old Tortoise immediately rushed into the sky and dodged Ji Fei's fierce punch. Bam! Under Ji Fei's fist, half of the mountain suddenly collapsed. Dust rose high into the sky and rocks and soil rolled down the mountain, making a loud noise that echoed throughout the mountains. "You old bastard, you're murdering me for money." Jiu Fei also rushed into the sky and directly hit Old Tortoise with his right hand. Rumble, as if a mountain was crushing down from the void, Jiu Fei's palm power shook the sky. In front of his palm, endless power surged and surged, converging into a terrifying wave of energy that rushed toward Old Tortoise. Jiu Fei displayed a terrifying martial arts combat skill. Although the moves were simple and direct, they contained the profound meaning of martial arts and unparalleled combat power. "Brat, what are you trying to do?" Old Tortoise shouted and pointed his finger. The terrifying palm power that rushed toward him was immediately dissolved into nothingness. As for Jiu Fei, he felt as if he was hit by a giant hammer and fell from the sky like a meteorite. Boom! The other half of the mountain that had not collapsed was smashed into pieces by Jiu Fei, who had descended from the sky. Rocks and soil flew in all directions, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Roar! Jiu Fei rushed into the sky, his long hair dancing wildly. He emitted an unparalleled battle intent and dared to punch at the demon god. "What are you trying to do? You old bastard, you almost destroyed my inner world just now. What do you think I'm trying to do?" Jiu Fei said angrily. "Okay, stop fooling around. Business is more important." Old Tortoise knew he went a bit too far just now, so he didn't blame Jiu Fei for attacking him. "Me? What business do you have?" Jiu Fei said disdainfully. "Come with me to a place." Old Tortoise suddenly said to Jiu Fei very seriously. "Where?" Jiu Fei had never seen Old Tortoise so serious. Even in the virtual sky world, when it was a matter of life and death, Old Tortoise was never this serious. Seeing Old Tortoise like this, Jiu Fei couldn't help but be stunned. "The Western Buddhist land." The Old Tortoise uttered these 4 words. Chapter 446. Spiritual mountains and temples could be seen everywhere in the boundless Buddhist land. From time to time, one could hear the peaceful chanting of sutras and the leisurely ringing of bells. This was a Buddhist land, the Western pure land of ultimate bliss in the eyes of the world. The old turtle and Jiu Fei did not enter the Buddhist land. They had been wandering outside for a few days. A few nights ago, the old turtle carved a teleportation formation and crossed the void to arrive outside the Buddhist land. However, he was cautious and did not directly enter the Buddhist land. It should be noted that the old turtle had once caused a huge ruckus in the Buddhist land by digging up the tomb of an ancient Buddhist lord. All the monks in the Western Buddhist land wanted nothing more than to beat the old turtle into the 18th layer of hell. It could be said that after that turmoil, all the monks in the Western Buddhist land knew of the old turtle's existence. The old turtle was now famous. Although the old turtle's cultivation had recovered to the demon god realm, even a demon god would not be able to withstand the siege of tens of thousands of Buddhas. Moreover, when he broke open the tomb of the Lord Buddha that day, he sensed 2 powerful auras inside the tomb. One of them belonged to the little monk, while the other was no weaker than the little monks. The old tortoise was extremely fearful of them. The abnormal little monk who walked out of the tomb of the Lord Buddha was strong and had a high cultivation. He was even stronger than the old tortoise. The other aura was no weaker than the little monk, so one could imagine what kind of existence it was. Since that abnormal little monk could walk out of the tomb of the Buddha Lord, another powerful existence could also walk out of the tomb of the Buddha Lord. The Western Buddhist land was not as simple as it seemed. Although the Western Pure Land of ultimate bliss was filled with auspicious auras, there were many hidden secrets. In the evening, the setting sun shone in the Western Buddhist land. An auspicious and peaceful aura could be felt from the Buddhist land ahead. Cranes soared in the sky and deer drank water by the stream. It was as if there really was a paradise in front of them that stood aloof from worldly affairs. Jiu Fei and the old turtle stood on top of a mountain and looked at the peaceful world in front of them. "Old tortoise, what are you worrying about? Isn't that little monk already being chased all over the place by you? Isn't he fleeing for 1,000 miles the moment he sees your shadow?" Jiu Fei said. He and the old turtle had been wandering outside the Buddhist land for a few days and he was getting impatient. "Humph. The Buddhist land in front of me is not as peaceful as it looks on the surface. Moreover, I am now a famous person in the Buddhist land, so I have to be careful." The old turtle sighed. When he dug up the tomb of the Lord Buddha, didn't those monks fight him to the death? He, I didn't expect the fearless old tortoise to be afraid. Jiu Fei said as he looked at the old tortoise meaningfully. Who said I'm afraid? I've made up my mind. Let's go to the Buddha's land tonight. Let's see who's afraid of whom. At most, we'll make a big mess in the Buddha's land again. Old Tortoise seemed to be unable to stand Jiu Fei's provocation and decided to go to the Buddha's land tonight. When Jiu Fei heard this, he looked at the peaceful world that was bathed in the sunset, and his gaze gradually became incomparably deep. The legendary Buddhist land of the West, the pure land of ultimate bliss, what kind of place is it? To some great figures, the Western Buddhist land might be no different from an ordinary spiritual land. However, to Jiu Fei, the Western Buddhist land was an unfamiliar place that he was looking forward to. The unknown region could be said to be filled with mystery and temptation for those who were about to enter that region, causing them to want to explore to the end. TSK, what other place could it be? It's just a spiritual land occupied by a group of monks, the old tortoise said with a disdainful expression. Jiu Fei did not say anything. The famous Western Buddhist land in the cultivation world, the pure land of ultimate bliss in the eyes of ordinary people, had a different meaning in the eyes of cultivators. The Tinglong continent was too big. The eastern land and the western land were separated by tens of thousands of miles. Ordinary people would not be able to travel from the eastern land to the western land even if they spent their entire lives. Only cultivators with powerful cultivation could travel across the void through teleportation arrays to travel between different parts of the continent. The border between the Western Buddhist land and the Central Plains was a boundless wasteland and mountain forest. Not only did the wasteland and mountain forest have formidable ferocious beasts roaming about, but countless ancient tribes had appeared there as well. Ordinary people would never be able to travel through such a wasteland and mountain forest. In the eyes of the people in the secular world, the entire world was under the rule of the three great dynasties. In fact, compared to the entire Tinglong continent, the area under the rule of the three great dynasties was too small. The Western Buddhist land was not under the rule of the three great dynasties. The territory of the Western Buddhist land was not the end of the Western land. The Western land seemed to have no end. The place that the old tortoise and Jiu Fei were heading to was the unknown ancient land to the west of the Western Buddhist land. Many cultivators in the central land were fascinated by the unknown ancient land. Year after year, many adventurer teams would venture deep into the dangerous and legendary ancient land. However, most of the people who ventured deep into the unknown ancient land never returned. Jiu Fei did not plan to explore the place. He was already fascinated by the Western Buddhist land in front of him. However, since the old tortoise had spoken, he had no choice but to go. The old tortoise and Jiu Fei opened up a cave on a nearby cliff. They sat down with their legs crossed and circulated their qi to build up their strength. They waited for the night to fall before entering the Western Buddhist land. In fact, the monks in the Western Buddhist land were not hostile toward outsiders. They were even very welcoming of outsiders. No matter where one was, the population was the foundation of the existence of a force. The Buddhist sect was no exception. The population of the Western Buddhist land was not huge. They needed fresh blood to join them. Therefore, there would be eminent monks appearing in the central land from time to time to promote the Dharma and attract believers. However, there was one guy who would definitely be hated by everyone if he entered the Western Buddhist land. Needless to say, that guy was the old tortoise who dared to dig up the tomb of the Lord Buddha. The place that Jiu Fei and the old tortoise were heading to was definitely one of the most terrifying and mysterious places in the Tinglong continent. Night fell and the sky was filled with stars. Jiu Fei and the old tortoise set off. They were like two specters that entered the Western Buddhist land in the night. They tried their best to avoid the mountains with temples as they advanced. Even so, they sensed a powerful aura on one of the mountains 100 miles into the Buddhist land. Jiu Fei was secretly shocked. The Western Buddhist land was indeed a land of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. They could not be underestimated. Some of the eminent monks of the Buddhist sect were even more powerful than the old monsters in the cultivation world. The old tortoise and Jiyu Fei were nocturnal. It had been 3 days since they set off. They had traveled 4 to 5,000 li into the western Buddhist land. It might be a long distance for ordinary people, but it was nothing for Jiyu Fei and the old tortoise who could fly in the sky. If it wasn't for the fact that the two didn't want to disturb the monks along the way, Jiyu Fei and the old tortoise would have already passed through the western Buddhist land and entered the mysterious far west. The western Buddhist land had countless mountains and temples within tens of thousands of li. On the evening of the 4th day, a spiritual mist lingered in front of them. It was hazy and indistinct shadows of mountains could be seen. Such an immortal land was rare in the western Buddhist land. Jiyu Fei and the old tortoise had only encountered a few such treasured lands along the way. Jiyu Fei couldn't help but frown when he saw the huge mountain shrouded in spiritual mist. There must be many eminent monks of the Buddhist sect cultivating in seclusion in such a spiritual land. The old tortoise was also annoyed and unhappily said, "We have to take a detour. Now is not the time to disturb those old monks, or else it will be very troublesome. You old tortoise, it's all your fault. Why did you dig up the Lord Buddha's tomb for no reason?" Jiyu Fei snapped. The old tortoise glanced at Jiyu Fei and said, "That's the eternal Buddha, the number 1 Buddha in the world. Aren't you curious to see what he looks like?" The old tortoise glanced at Jiyu Fei and said, "Then did you see the Lord Buddha?" Jiyu Fei was almost speechless. Digging up the Lord Buddha's tomb just to see what he looked like? Perhaps only the old tortoise would do such a thing. "No," the old tortoise regretfully said. "An extreme expert like the eternal Buddha might have left behind his body even after his death. It's an empty tomb. Perhaps it's a trap set by someone." How outrageous. The old tortoise couldn't help but hate the little monk who walked out of the Lord Buddha's tomb. In order not to disturb the monks in the Buddhist land, the two had to take a detour. On the 8th day, Jiyu Fei and the others finally approached the area to the west of the western Buddhist land. Although they were still several hundred li away, they could already sense the abnormality there. However, the scene was completely different from what Jiyu Fei had imagined. According to Jiyu Fei's understanding, since it was an ancient area, it should be full of danger and ancient ruins. The scene that appeared in front of Jiyu Fei was an endless wasteland and forest. However, the old tortoise was obviously much more cautious when he arrived at this area. He stopped and opened his inner world to release the Demon King Fire Chelin, Xiaoqing, and the corpse general doppelganger that was holding a black stick. Here, he was no longer afraid of being noticed by the monks in the Buddhist land and could do whatever he wanted. Xiaoqing obviously recognized Jiyu Fei. After coming out of the old tortoise's inner world, he immediately flew towards Jiyu Fei and circled around him intimately. Jiyu Fei. The huge 3-clawed green flood dragon stopped in front of Jiyu Fei and looked at Jiyu Fei with a pair of green eyes that were like divine jade. Haha. Xiaoqing, long time no see. Jiyu Fei was also very happy to see Xiaoqing. When he met Xiaoqing in the southern wilderness, Xiaoqing was just a Xiaoqing snake the size of a chopstick. Now, Xiaoqing had transformed into a flood dragon. It had to be said that the old tortoise had some tricks up his sleeve. He had stimulated the flood dragon bloodline in Xiaoqing's body so quickly and transformed Xiaoqing into a 3-clawed flood dragon. "Let's go." The old tortoise jumped onto the Fire Chelin's back and rode it into the unknown area of the endless wasteland and forest in a flashy manner. "Get on," Xiaoqing said to Jiyu Fei. Upon hearing this, Jiyu Fei did not hesitate and jumped onto Xiaoqing's back. Then, Xiaoqing carried Jiyu Fei and flew forward. Jiyu Fei rode the flood dragon and soared into the sky. He was as elegant as an immortal. Chapter 447. The team of Jiyu Fei and the old tortoise was undeniably powerful. The old tortoise had the cultivation of a beast god, and his corpse general clone definitely had the strength of an immortal realm. Meanwhile, the 3-clawed dragon Xiaoqing and the fiery Chelin were both at the peak of the void controlling realm. Among the group, Jiyu Fei's cultivation was the weakest. His cultivation of the first layer of the void controlling realm was not enough. Even the Xiaoqing could easily defeat Ji Fei. The three-clawed dragon Xiaoqing and Ji Fei had met in the southern desolation. Before they met the old tortoise, he was always Ji Fei's shadow. Although his cultivation was now higher than Ji Fei's, he was willing to let Ji Fei ride on his back and carry Ji Fei forward. One had to admit that the cultivators of the beast race had an absolute advantage over the human cultivators. The soaring dragon was even faster than the flying swords of the Guangqing immortal sect. The group no longer had any concerns after entering the primordial desolation forbidden ground. They all executed their escape arts and flew forward, traveling 100 miles in an instant. The old tortoise seemed to be very familiar with the primordial desolation forbidden ground. He rode on the fiery Chiline and led the way. The endless wilderness and woods were moving backward rapidly. When they were about 300 miles into the primordial desolation forbidden ground, the woods below suddenly disappeared and were replaced by a blood-red land. Ji Fei stood on the back of the Xiaoqing and looked down. The land was barren, and the soil seemed to be soaked in blood. It was so red that it sent chills down one's spine. After entering the blood-red land, Ji Fei felt uneasy for no reason. It was not because he felt something was wrong, but because he had a vague feeling. At that moment, the old tortoise slowed down and became cautious. It was as if they had entered a strange place. The primordial desolation forbidden ground was filled with unknown dangers. Even an immortal realm would have a hard time escaping unscathed. After advancing another 25 kilometers, Ji Fei discovered that white bones were starting to appear on the scarlet ground below. The group became even more careful, flying forward at a moderate pace. It was completely silent, and blood-colored clouds started to appear in the sky. The evil blood-colored clouds floated about like a bloody mist, and Ji Fei seemed to smell blood. "What is this place?" Ji Fei asked the old tortoise. This place was truly evil. Ever since he entered, he hadn't seen any signs of life. It was as if this was an endless land of death where all life was extinct. "This seems to be a battlefield," the old tortoise said with a solemn expression. "When I was chasing after the little monk, I accidentally found this place." An ancient battlefield? Ji Fei was taken aback. Although this place was blood-red, he couldn't feel any baleful aura. If this was really an ancient battlefield, it should be filled with killing intent and vile yin energy. What was going on with the scene before them? The group continued to advance. On the blood-colored ground, black bones began to appear among the white bones. Ji Fei discovered that the black bones among the white bones were not burnt black, but they were black from the inside out. Demon bones? Ji Fei suddenly recalled the time when he was in danger at the icy azure pool. In the lair of the Blackwater mystical snake, he found a black skeleton full of demonic nature. What was going on? The black bones on the ground didn't seem to emit any demonic nature. Could it be that after countless years, the demonic nature on the bones had been completely erased? After entering the blood-colored world for thousands of kilometers, the blood-colored clouds became even thicker. The shadow of a giant mountain appeared in front of them, and a terrifying aura that made one's heart palpitate came from the front. "This is..." Ji Fei's heart trembled. The blurry mountain in front of him made him feel a great pressure, as if he was facing a world. "That is our destination." The old tortoise stared at the giant mountain in front of them and said. The group stopped. The calm blood-colored ground was no longer calm. Everyone felt a dangerous aura, as if there was no turning back in front of them. What exactly is there that even an old tortoise like you is tempted to take the risk to explore it? Ji Fei finally realized how terrifying the savage ancient place was. No wonder few cultivators who entered the savage ancient place were able to come out. Ji Fei felt that there was a hell waiting for them in front of them. The dried bones on the blood-red land had almost covered the entire land, almost covering the sinister blood-red color. Furthermore, Ji Fei discovered that among the dried bones, there were sparkling bones that were as clear as jade. Only the bones of extraordinary people would have a strange phenomenon. Only the bones of great figures would have a luster. As for jade-like bones, only immortals and true demons would have them. It was hard to imagine what kind of ancient battlefield this was. Could it be that a great war between immortals and demons had taken place here? Let's go. The old tortoise had been here before, so he knew that they were not in any danger yet. He continued to ride the fire Chiline and flew forward. After a few more miles, the blurry mountain in front of them could be clearly seen. Jiu Fei was deeply shocked. It was a giant mountain that pierced through the clouds. The pitch-black body of the mountain formed a sharp contrast with the blood-colored world. This was definitely an ancient giant mountain. In front of it, people could deeply feel how small they were, like ants. It was as if all living things were too insignificant in front of this ancient giant mountain. Soon, the group was less than 20 miles away from the giant mountain. They could clearly see everything. The mountain was surrounded by blood-colored clouds, and the pitch-black body of the mountain seemed to have countless craters and cracks. The towering giant mountain had a majestic aura. There was not a single trace of life on it. On the black body of the mountain, there were some places that were even darker, like bottomless pits. There were only endless shadows. This was a giant mountain without any signs of life. Just when Jiu Fei thought that the old tortoise was going to climb the mountain, the old tortoise's action surprised him. The old tortoise actually rode the fire Chiline and descended to the ground. Crack, 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 the group walked among the bones. With every step, there would be a bone-chilling sound of bones breaking. The old tortoise led the way in front. Jiu Fei, Xiaoqing, the fire Chiline, and the old tortoise's corpse general avatar followed behind. They did not climb the giant black mountain that pierced through the clouds. Instead, they walked along the foot of the mountain, trying to bypass this evil giant mountain. The skeletons on the ground had already existed for who knew how long. Most of the skeletons had already become dim and lusterless. With a light touch, they would turn into bone powder. However, some bones were still crystal clear like divine jade, as if there was divine light and demonic qi lingering on them. The degree of hardness was even better than divine iron. It was very extraordinary. When passing by a pitch-black skeleton, Jiu Fei could not help but swing a sharp sword light at the skeleton. Clang! When the sword light struck the pitch-black demon bone, the sound of metal colliding rang out. Even though the demon bone was sent flying, it did not shatter. The giant mountain had a radius of thousands of miles. Although the old tortoise, Jiu Fei, and the others did not walk slowly, it still took them half an hour to bypass the giant mountain. After bypassing the giant mountain, what he saw in front of him shocked Jiu Fei to the extreme. Behind the giant mountain was still a world of blood and bones. However, to his left and right, the hazy shadow of the giant mountain loomed in the blood fog. Behind the mountain was a hilly area. In front, the blood fog surged and a murderous aura soared into the sky. It was another scene. The world was extremely dark, but it was not absolute darkness. It could not be said that there was light either. Blood clouds floated in the sky, and above the countless bones on the ground, there was a ghastly aura surging. The world was filled with an endless aura of death. There was no sound, no life, only a deathly stillness. Jiu Fei could not imagine that behind the giant mountain was such an extremely evil world. It made him feel as if he had entered a terrifying hell. Jiu Fei found that his divine thoughts could only extend 2 or 3 miles at most. It seemed that there was an irresistible force that imprisoned this space. He tried to soar into the sky, but failed. There was an unfathomable force that firmly bound him to the ground. This situation was very similar to the day when he walked out of the northern demon region and walked on the ancient bridge across the abyss of immortals and demons. On the ancient stone bridge in the abyss of immortals and demons, there was a force that suppressed everything. It seemed that here, there was also a force that suppressed everything. It was more accurate to say that it suppressed and bound everything. Jiu Fei suddenly understood. No wonder there was no evil or terrifying aura outside, even though there were bones everywhere and blood fog floating in the air. It seemed that someone had used a great supernatural power to seal all the evil aura and death aura behind the mountain. Jiu Fei carefully examined his body and found that there was nothing wrong with his body. His blood vessels were still surging with vitality. Only his various battle skills and supernatural powers were not as powerful as before. His yuan qi could not pass through his body and form terrifying battle skills. This undoubtedly caused Ji Yufei's combat strength to plummet. What's going on? Ji Yufei felt very uneasy. He asked the old turtle standing beside him. The old turtle was an ancient demon race powerhouse, so he definitely knew many ancient secrets. The old tortoise solemnly stared at the horrifying and evil world in front of him and said in a deep voice, "He used a supreme divine ability to move the 9 divine mountains here and set up an inescapable net to trap and seal this place. He collected countless vengeful souls and gave them a place to rest. This is truly hell." What? Ji Yufei was taken aback. There were actually 9 such huge mountains that pierced through the clouds and whose peaks could not be seen at a glance. It was really unbelievable. According to what the old turtle said, there was a legendary hell in front of them. It was really shocking. In Buddhism, there was a saying that if I don't go to hell, who will? Legend has it that the Supreme Buddha wanted to condense the 6 paths and create reincarnation so that after death, the souls of all living beings in the world could be reincarnated. If I'm not wrong, this is the hell path of the 6 paths of reincarnation that the Buddha refined. This hell path is actually a small world that was refined from the Buddha's inner world, the old turtle continued. Then, do we still go in? Ji Yufei could not help but be a little stunned. He faintly felt that this was definitely a dangerous place. If he went in, it would not bode well for him. Chapter 448. When Ji Yufei found out that the evil and terrifying world in front of him might be the Naraka path of the 6 paths of reincarnation refined by the ancient Buddhist lord, he could not help but hesitate. No one knew what kind of place the Naraka path refined by the ancient Buddhist lord was. However, when Ji Yufei saw the murderous aura in front of him, the bloody mist drifting in the sky, the yin energy surging on the ground, and the endless skeletons, it was obvious that this was not a good place. It was definitely a place of great danger. Do we still want to go in? Ji Yufei asked. The world in front of him made him feel a little uneasy. Of course we have to go in. You should know that the 6 paths of reincarnation is a Buddhist treasure. It is 6 small worlds that are not inferior to the mountain and river cauldron. The old tortoise's tone was extremely firm. You want to take the Naraka path? Ji Yufei was surprised. Ji Yufei could not help but admire the old tortoise's courage. Could it be that he wanted to control the 6 paths of reincarnation? Hee. The old tortoise chuckled. Although he did not say anything else, Ji Yufei knew that this guy had already made up his mind. Throughout the ages, the Buddhist lord wanted to control the 6 Taos, to refine the cycle of reincarnation, to create an endless world of reincarnation for all living things in heaven and earth. Legend had it that the 6 Taos were created from a part of heaven and earth that he controlled. The 6 paths were the 6 small worlds. Can I not go in? Ji Yufei asked with some hesitation. He really did not want to take the risk. He had just truly stepped onto the supreme path of martial arts, and he also had the mark of the great path that the mysterious person had branded in his heart. It could be said that his future was bright. The old tortoise glanced at Ji Yufei and then said, "Even if you want to go in now, you can't." As he spoke, the old tortoise stretched out his right hand and pressed forward. Bang! The void trembled and a soft golden light suddenly flashed in front of him. The golden light was not overbearing or destructive, but it exuded a peaceful aura. Buddhist aura? When Ji Yufei saw this, he was taken aback. There seemed to be nothing in the void in front of him. There was actually a layer of Buddhist light hidden in the void. This greatly surprised Ji Yufei. That Buddhist light was very similar to the Buddhist light emitted by the Buddhist land in the little monk's inner world, which was filled with heavenly flowers and golden lotuses. Ji Yufei, Old Turtle, and the others did not enter the hell world in front of them. With the Buddha's light blocking their way, they were still affected by the power of the world in front of them. Ji Yufei's yuan qi was completely suppressed. He could not even soar into the sky. Xiaoqing, Fire Qilin, and even Old Turtle's corpse General Avatar had their cultivation suppressed. However, it seemed like the old tortoise was not affected at all. It raised its hand and shook the void, revealing the Buddhist light that was blocking its path. However, Ji Yufei soon found out why the old tortoise was not affected. It was because he was surrounded by a world of his own. The power of heaven and earth flowed out of his body, making the void outside his body form its own law and not be suppressed. However, even the power of heaven and earth couldn't dissolve the layer of Buddhist light hidden in the void in front of them. The Buddhist light contained great Buddhist power, and only those with great divine power could break it. The old tortoise was worn down in the virtual sky world for countless years, and his cultivation was forcibly shaved. Although he had regained his strength in the demon god realm, it was absolutely difficult for him to break the Buddhist light in front of him. Even if the old tortoise was at its peak, it might not be able to break the ancient Buddha's restriction. A purple flame mark appeared between Ji Fei's eyebrows. The power of heaven and earth diffused from the mark and enveloped his whole body. Ji Fei felt his whole body relaxed. The power of heaven and earth could indeed isolate the great restrictive force coming from the front. The three-clawed flood dragon Xiaoqing and the Chilean monster king didn't have an inner world. The power of the restriction made them feel uncomfortable, as if a big mountain was pressing down on them. Since we can't get in, then, let's go back, Ji Fei said to the old tortoise when he saw the Buddhist light blocking the way. He really didn't want to take the risk. Go back. The old tortoise smiled and said, since we're here, we have to try. That layer of Buddhist light is actually not unbreakable. What should we do? Ji Fei was a little nervous. He had already faintly realized that the old tortoise had come all the way to Taishan sect to find him. It was definitely not a good thing. The mountain and river cauldron. The old tortoise said these 3 words. When the old tortoise said these 3 words, Ji Fei's face suddenly turned green. The old tortoise knew that he couldn't control the mountain and river cauldron, so how could he use it to help him? You old tortoise. Ji Fei was a little angry. The old tortoise looked around and then said, let's stay here for now. What? Ji Fei almost jumped up. The evil yin qi here was extremely strong. How could they stay in such a place for a long time? Even if it was a cultivator, staying in such a place for a long time would probably damage their Taoist qi. You don't have to worry, the old tortoise said, then directly opened his inner world and walked in. Ji Fei, the 3-clawed flood dragon Xiaoqing, the Chilean monster king, and the old tortoise's corpse general avatar also walked into the old tortoise's inner world. The old tortoise didn't intend to set up camp on the bloody land under the evil giant mountain. When Ji Fei entered the old tortoise's inner world, a strong wave of spiritual qi hit him in the face. The old tortoise's inner world was like a paradise on earth. The light of the lake and the scenery of the mountains reflected each other, and the spirit peaks were faintly discernible amidst the mist and clouds. There were spirit birds chirping in the mountains, and a group of spirit deer was leisurely chewing on the green grass by the river. Beside the lake, between the mountains, there were jade palaces that decorated the place. In the sky, there was even a floating palace. Above the palace, there was a spiritual light surrounding it. It was very extraordinary. The old tortoise's inner world was no longer as dilapidated as it was before. The fairyland-like inner world had a radius of thousands of miles. The sky was blue, and the sun was shining brightly. It could be said that the inner world had already begun to take shape. However, Ji Fei found that the sun in the sky seemed very close to him, as if he could reach out and touch it. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like a real sun. It was obvious that the old tortoise's inner world couldn't give birth to real stars. Even so, it was still very impressive. The abundant spiritual qi here was no worse than a spiritual land. It was definitely a holy place for cultivation. The old tortoise soared into the sky and flew toward the palace in the sky. Everyone followed closely behind. In the following days, Ji Fei stayed in the old tortoise's divine palace. The old tortoise taught Ji Fei a heart refinement technique and asked him to use it day and night to refine the mountain and river cauldron in his inner world. According to the old tortoise, the mountain and river cauldron contained a wisp of primordial chaos qi from the beginning of the world, which could dissolve the Buddha's light restrictions set up by the ancient Buddhist masters. The primordial chaos qi could transform into yin and yang, the 5 elements, and give birth to all things in the world. It was the ancestral qi of the world and could break all magical powers. Dispelling the Buddha's light was a piece of cake. In fact, The primordial chaos chi that the old tortoise taught Jiu Fei wasn't a very mysterious technique. It was just a method used by the ancient demon clan to refine weapons. This method didn't have any complicated steps. It could even be said to be very simple and direct. One only needed to focus on refining the mountain and river cauldron every day. Once his spirit was fused with the artifact and he became one with the artifact, Jiu Fei would be able to control the mountain and river cauldron as he pleased, just like his limbs. This mental cultivation method was similar to the Daoist's sacrificial refining method of Dharma treasures. However, it was easier said than done. It was even more difficult to refine a supreme treasure like the mountain and river cauldron that had already developed a spirit. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Jiu Fei focused on refining the mountain and river cauldron every day without any distractions. However, he realized that communicating with the mountain and river cauldron's soul with his mind was more difficult than ascending to the heavens. Half a month passed. Jiu Fei's divine will could not penetrate the mountain and river cauldron to contact the cauldron's soul. The cauldron's soul seemed to have fallen asleep and was difficult to awaken. On this day, when Jiu Fei seemed to be able to vaguely sense the existence of the cauldron's soul, an eerie and terrifying aura suddenly came from outside the divine palace. Jiu Fei opened his eyes abruptly. He was a little angry. The sudden eerie and evil aura made it difficult for him to sense the existence of the cauldron's soul. He rushed out of the divine palace and saw a few figures standing in the distant sky. In the void in front of them, there was a door that had been opened. Through the door in the void, he could see dark clouds and deafening thunder outside. From time to time, there would be flashes of blood-red light. What was going on? Jiu Fei flew forward and soon approached. He saw the old tortoise's figure. Beside the old tortoise were the three-clawed dragon Xiaoqing and the Chilean demon king. They were eager to rush out. The old tortoise glanced at Jiu Fei and said, "You're here." As he approached, Jiu Fei could clearly sense the terrifying and evil aura coming from outside. Outside, there were layers of blood-red waves surging between heaven and earth. The scene was indescribably evil and terrifying. Jiu Fei could not help but be moved when he saw the heart-palpitating scene outside. It was like a terrifying hell outside. Yin qi filled the air and dark clouds rolled violently as if they were about to overwhelm the earth. Blood-red light flashed from time to time and a terrible evil aura filled the air. It was as if the end of the world had come. Every night of the full moon, terrifying things will happen in this region. Powerful evil beings will appear out of nowhere and roam this bloody land. Old Tortoise analyzed the situation. Evil beings? Jiu Fei was shocked. Could the evil spirits of the Naraka realm have escaped from hell? This was absolutely impossible. How could the evil spirits of the Naraka realm escape from the Buddhist light restriction laid down by the ancient Buddhist lord? On the night of the full moon, the entire blood-red land will become a land of death. The evil beings that wander the blood-red land will attack anything that has the aura of life. The old tortoise continued to analyze. He seemed to know what was happening outside. Savage, desolate ancient land. Jiu Fei was incomparably shocked. No wonder those who entered the savage, desolate ancient domain were rarely able to walk out of it. Even an immortal wouldn't be able to come out unscathed, let alone ordinary cultivators. The chilly wind howled angrily. Among the surging yin qi and blood mist, ghostly howls began to come out. The sound was indescribably terrifying. 2 rays of divine light shot out from the old tortoise's eyes. He looked outside the void door and muttered to himself, "Is it here? What is here?" Jiu Fei was very surprised and uneasy. There seemed to be some unknown thing outside. It could also be called an evil being. Everything that was happening outside the inner world was too strange and terrifying. Dark clouds rolled in the dark sky. Blood-red light flashed and the mournful ghostly howls became even more tragic. It was as if there were thousands of evil spirits howling in the world. The howls seemed to be coming from not far away. Chapter 449. Outside the old turtle's inner world, a murderous aura soared into the sky and a bloody mist surged, as if it had turned into a terrifying world. A terrible evil aura poured in from the outside, making one's scalp tingle. These are the evil spirits that wander between heaven and earth. Too many people have died on this battlefield. Their resentment is endless, and their fighting spirit is unquenchable. They have turned into evil spirits, said the old turtle. The heart-palpitating howls were getting closer and closer, as if they were roaring in the ears of Jiu Fei and the others. This situation made it difficult for them to calm down. Waves of cold air seeped into the void door that connected the inner world and the outer world that the old turtle had opened up. Jiu Fei felt as if he was in an ice cave, and waves of cold air rushed into his body. The three-clawed dragon Xiaoqing and the Qilin demon king kept growling. Their demonic powers surged and their muscles tightened, as if they wanted to rush out and fight with the evil spirits outside. Rumble. Accompanied by the sound of thunder in the bloody world outside, the dark sky seemed to be cut open, and rays of blood-colored light appeared. Vaguely, Jiu Fei and the others seemed to see a huge black shadow standing between heaven and earth, roaring at the moon. It was incredible. A blood-colored moon hung in the sky, sprinkling down an extremely evil blood-colored moonlight. You too want to go out? The old turtle saw that Xiaoqing and the Qilin demon king were eager to fight, so he said to them. Xiaoqing and the Qilin demon king quickly nodded. All right, you guys can go now. With that, the old turtle released 2 rays of light into the bodies of Xiaoqing and the Qilin demon king. You only have 2 hours. Fight to your heart's content. Xiaoqing and the Qilin demon king were overjoyed. After bowing to the old turtle, they turned and rushed out, disappearing into the terrifying world outside. Why did you inject 2 rays of heaven and earth power into their bodies? Jiu Fei looked at the old turtle with some doubts. He could already see that the 2 rays of light that the old turtle injected into the bodies of Xiaoqing and the Qilin demon king were actually the inner world power condensed by the old turtle. Hey, aren't you asking the obvious? The outside world is not like my inner world. The restrictive power outside suppresses everything. If I don't inject 2 streams of world power into their bodies, I'm afraid they'll be torn to shreds by the evil beings outside. Old Tortoise said. So that's how it is, Jiu Fei thought to himself. The terrifying world outside was shrouded in an unfathomable restraining power. Unless it was a cultivator who had cultivated an inner world, any cultivator, even an immortal, would be suppressed in this ancient battlefield. It had to be said that the old tortoise's control of the inner world was not something that Jiu Fei could compare with. At the very least, Jiu Fei could not exert his inner world on other cultivators. Why did Xiaoqing and the others go out? Jiu Fei asked. It was dark outside, with flashes of blood-red light and evil beings wandering around. He really could not understand why Xiaoqing and the Qilin demon king would take the risk to go out. Do you really not know? Or are you pretending not to know? Old Tortoise looked at Jiu Fei up and down with interest and said. If I knew, would I need to ask you? Jiu Fei said grumpily. They went out for the evil beings. Soul power is a great supplement for any cultivator, Old Tortoise explained to Jiu Fei. Jiu Fei was immediately taken aback when he heard that. He then said, Isn't this the behavior of evil demons? How can they refine the divine souls of other cultivators? Hehe, since when did you become so kind-hearted? Old Tortoise chuckled and said, The remnant souls and evil beings outside are the most ferocious and evil beings. Those things don't even have any spiritual wisdom. They only have the instinct to kill and devour all life. Refining these things is actually saving the world. This. Jiu Fei did not know what to say. Old Tortoise's words seemed to make sense. Refining the evil beings outside was actually eliminating evil. Why, do you want to go hunting? Old Tortoise asked Jiu Fei. Hunting evil beings? Jiu Fei could not help but feel a little tempted. Powerful soul power actually had a huge life force. It was a kind of power that was condensed from spirit, qi, and spirit. For cultivators, refining soul power could quickly improve their cultivation and strength. In particular, refining soul power could strengthen the divine soul and direct the source of life, making the life force more vigorous. Roar. At that moment, an earth-shattering roar suddenly rang out from outside. Under this roar, the entire world outside began to tremble. Old Tortoise and Jiu Fei in the inner world were immediately shocked. Oh no! Old Tortoise rushed out immediately and disappeared into the rolling blood mist outside. He flew in the direction of the sound. At the same time, an extremely powerful and evil aura came from afar and directly penetrated into Old Tortoise's inner world, making Jiu Fei's heart palpitate. Needless to say, Xiaoqing and Qilin Demon King must have encountered an extremely powerful evil being. Swoosh! A purple flame mark emerged from between Jiu Fei's eyebrows and emitted waves like waves that enveloped Jiu Fei's entire body. Then, a 5-colored divine light shot out from Jiu Fei's body. In the next moment, he turned into a 5-colored divine rainbow and rushed out of Old Tortoise's inner world. Just as Jiu Fei rushed out of Old Tortoise's inner world, he saw a giant blood-colored hand that emitted endless blood-colored light a few miles in front of him, grabbing straight down from the sky. The giant blood-colored hand was as large as a mountain, covering one side of the world. Under the giant hand, heavy waves of blood surged and blood-colored lightning burst out, emitting a vast and terrifying energy fluctuation. Roar! A furious roar rang out, and Jiu Fei saw a blue serpent soar 1,000 feet into the air. It was like a blue divine mountain, crashing into the blood-red hand that was descending. Bam! The thousands of feet-long dragon was directly slapped down from the sky by the evil hand that descended from the sky. Boom! The earth shook, and blood-colored dust and bones rushed into the sky. Jiu Fei knew that the green flood dragon was Little Blue. What kind of evil creature was it to be able to send Little Blue flying with a single slap? It was really shocking. It should be known that Xiaoqing was a great demon at the 9th heaven of the Imperial Void Realm, and its strength was incomparably powerful. Just as Jiu Fei was about to rush forward, a low roar like muffled thunder sounded between heaven and earth. The void trembled, the blood mist surged, and a giant Qilin divine beast soared into the sky. Its body was covered in raging flames, and the endless blood mist between heaven and earth dissipated under the raging flames. Within a radius of thousands of feet, the mist was steaming, and the blazing flames shot straight into the sky. There seemed to be a huge pillar of fire standing between heaven and earth, and the bright divine light was somewhat dazzling. The giant Qilin's body was more than 10 feet long, and it soared into the sky, exuding a powerful momentum that disdained the world. Jiu Fei could not help but change his expression. Even from a distance, he still felt a great pressure, and a vast and frightening fluctuation was spreading like a raging sea. A great demon at the 9th heaven of the Imperial Void Realm was really terrifying. The Qilin Demon King had the body of a moose, the tail of an ox, the hooves of a horse, and the skin of a fish. There was a pair of golden divine horns on its huge head. It directly rushed towards the evil blood-red hand in the sky. Rumble, the heaven and earth shook, as if 2 mountains were moving, and then instantly collided together. In the earth-shattering noise, the Qilin Demon King was sent flying, and the blood-red hand also became dim. The Qilin Demon King was much stronger than the 3-clawed dragon Xiaoqing, but when contending with the blood-red hand, it still fell to the ground. The Qilin Demon King was sent flying thousands of feet away, and he spat out a mouthful of flaming blood. Then, he quietly floated in the air, surrounded by raging flames, and the whole sky was burned red. The blood-red hand in the sky stopped in the air, and then there was a change. Endless bloodlight condensed, and a 1,000 feet tall blood-red giant appeared in the bloodlight. This blood-colored giant stood in the void, indomitable. It was like a primordial demonic mountain towering between the heavens and the earth, giving off an endless sense of evil and terrifying oppression. Jiu Fei was utterly dumbfounded. The scene before him was simply too shocking. The crimson giant's body was blurry, making it impossible to see its face clearly. It seemed to be an existence that had a form, but no substance. This is the evil thing that old tortoise said. It's really evil. Jiu Fei murmured to himself, and his face showed a look of disbelief. The evil thing in front of him exuded a vast and terrifying aura, and it was definitely a terrible existence that surpassed the Imperial Void Realm. Roar! The roar of Xiaoqing came from the ground, and a green shadow of the dragon rushed up from the ground, letting out an unwilling roar, and retreated. 2 rays of bloodlight shot out from the head of the blood-red giant, and then swept in all directions. At that moment, a tortoise shell appeared silently on top of the giant's head, and quickly grew to the size of a mountain, covering the entire sky, and directly smashed down on the 1,000-feet-tall blood-red shadow. Boom! The 1,000-feet-tall blood-red shadow collapsed in an instant, and was smashed by the stone tortoise shell that had grown to the size of a mountain. Endless bloodlight burst out, as if there were countless blood-red shadows rushing in all directions. Withdraw! Old Tortoise's voice came from the void, and then a pitch-black vortex appeared in the midst of the endless bloodlight that had exploded and devoured all of it. This old tortoise! Jiu Fei could not help but smile when he saw this. The undying old tortoise still couldn't change its sly nature, and still liked to smash the tortoise shell behind people. Just as Jiu Fei let out a sigh of relief, he suddenly felt a dangerous aura coming from his side, and it made all the pores on his body explode, causing his hair to stand on end. Without thinking, with a whoosh, he left an afterimage on the spot, and in the next moment, he had already appeared 10 feet away. Jiu Fei turned around, and was instantly shocked. He saw a terrifying figure standing in the void where he was originally standing, and a pair of green eyes that were like will-o'-the-wisps were staring at him without moving. Chapter 450. Woo woo, the chilly wind was howling, and the world seemed to have turned into hell. A terrifying aura permeated every inch of the void. The sky was gloomy, and from time to time, blood-colored lightning tore through the void. It had to be said that this was an evil and terrifying world. The light was incomparably dim, and the ground was littered with white bones. There were ghastly bones, divine bones that flickered with a sparkling luster, and demon bones that shone with a jet-black luster. Black clouds and blood-colored evil mist drifted and surged. The chilly wind was howling, and many white bones were constantly trembling, making bone-chilling sounds of bones colliding with each other. No one knew how many years these bones had existed. From time to time, the grayish-white bone powder was swept up into the sky by the chilly wind and then scattered between heaven and earth. After rushing out of the old turtle's inner world, Jiu Fei soon encountered danger. A terrifying figure stood where he originally stood. It was an evil spirit with disheveled hair. Jiu Fei smelled a rancid smell coming from the opposite side. It was more appropriate to call it a rotten corpse than an evil spirit. Some parts of this evil creature's body exposed eerie white bones, and some parts were flowing with rancid yellow water. It was extremely disgusting and terrifying. This rotten corpse had no eyes on its head, only 2 eye sockets that emitted powerful soul power. An incomparably evil and powerful aura emanated from its rancid body. What is this thing? When Jiu Fei saw this evil creature, he could not help but have a layer of goosebumps. His scalp was a little numb. The face of the other party was really too disgusting. At this time, there were bursts of roars coming from all directions. Several powerful evil auras appeared nearby, and they were quickly approaching. Immediately, 2 powerful waves of demonic power suddenly erupted. A dragon's roar shook the heaven and earth. A cyan flood dragon broke through the layers of yin qi and blood mist and rushed into the distance. Boom! The monstrous fire burned half of the sky red. Endless dark clouds and blood mist dissipated under the fire. A fire Chileen, whose whole body was emitting endless flames, rushed into the sky and met the approaching evil creature. The heaven and earth shook, and a terrifying power spread out. Xiaoqing and the Chileen Demon King had already fought fiercely with those evil creatures. Roar! A mournful ghost howl resounded. The evil corpse in front of Jiu Fei exuded a putrid stench. Its body turned into a dark grey evil light and rushed towards Jiu Fei. Jiu Fei sneered and punched forward. A dazzling golden light illuminated the earth. A frightening aura swept towards the incoming evil corpses like a golden wave. That evil corpse did not make a sound. It directly punched forward. A rotten smell filled the air, and a greyish-black death aura instantly enveloped this part of the world. After the golden light collided with the boundless deathly aura, the earth trembled and the sky shook. It was as if the entire world was about to collapse. A powerful energy ripple spread in all directions. Jiu Fei was sent flying 100 zhong away, while the demonic corpse was sent flying as it let out a series of cries. Buzz! With a sword sound, Jiu Fei separated his hands. The power of heaven and earth came out from the purple flame brand in the middle of his eyebrows. At the same time, 5 sword lights rushed out from his body and merged with the power of heaven and earth. It seemed as if 5 small worlds appeared around him. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The power of the 5 elements was vast and mighty, and the sword chi soared into the sky. In each of the 5 small worlds, there was a sword shadow, emitting a terrifying sword chi fluctuation. After the 5 elements sword chi and the power of heaven and earth merged, it gave birth to an unpredictable martial arts skill. It was not a magic skill, but it was better than a magic skill. It was not a magic skill, but it was more powerful than a magic skill. Kill! Ji Yufei shouted. He controlled the 5 small worlds and rushed towards the evil corpse. His battle intent was like a rainbow, and his sword chi was unparalleled. Roar! The evil corpse seemed to be stimulated by Ji Yufei's battle intent and killing intent. It raised its head and roared. Its entire body was covered with a grayish-black deathly aura, like a devil howling. The evil corpse waved its hand, and the majestic deathly aura covered a part of the world in an instant, enveloping Ji Yufei, who was rushing towards it. Ji Yufei only felt a rancid smell. The grayish-black deathly aura seemed to have an evil power that could corrode everything. The 5 worlds around him showed signs of dimming. Sky splitter! Ji Yufei roared. His hands shook, and the 5 small worlds around him suddenly emitted endless sword chi fluctuation. The sword shadows in the 5 small worlds vibrated and then shot out. As if the 5 small worlds suddenly exploded, the 5 small worlds expanded infinitely. The 5 elements sword chi broke the surrounding deathly aura, and the endless deathly aura quickly dissipated like snow under the influence of the 5 small worlds. The 5 small worlds shook at the same time, as if they were splitting the world apart. A dreadful mighty force spread out and dispersed the deathly aura. The evil corpse suffered a great impact and was blown away again. Ji Yufei stretched out his hand and received a golden sword chi, then he swung it forward, swoosh. Like a golden rainbow, the golden sword chi shot through the sky, emitting the dreadful power of metal. It seemed to cut the void, like a meteor chasing after the moon. It suddenly caught up with the evil corpse. The evil corpse seemed to feel the danger. Its pair of ghostly hands moved forward to block. Endless deathly aura surged out from its hands that were so thick that the bones could be seen. However, that metal sword light was like a hot knife cutting through butter, directly breaking through the layers of death chi and piercing through the evil corpse's chest. White bones and corpse fluid splashed out from the evil corpse's chest. Roar! The evil corpse roared and directly turned around to escape into the depths of this evil world. The blood-colored moon sprinkled down the evil moonlight. This savage ancient domain had become extremely evil and terrifying. Powerful evil creatures suddenly appeared out of nowhere and wandered on this blood-colored land. This was a lifeless world of death. The outside of the Hell Path had become even more terrifying than the Hell Path. Although the powerful evil beings did not possess the spiritual wisdom of human cultivators, they possessed an innate battle instinct. The chi and blood of Ji Yufei and the others were exuberant. Their life force seeped out of their bodies. In this strange world, they were like bright lights in the dark, very conspicuous. The exuberant life force attracted the evil creatures wandering on the blood-colored land. Ji Yufei sensed that several powerful evil auras had disappeared from Xiaoqing and Qilin Demon King's side. Needless to say, Xiaoqing and Qilin Demon King had already harvested the soul power of those powerful evil creatures. However, Ji Yufei also sensed that there were more and more evil creatures around him. The aura of some evil creatures was no weaker than that of Xiaoqing and Qilin Demon King. He did not know where the old turtle was hiding. After the old turtle destroyed the powerful blood shadow that was comparable to a demigod, it did not attack again. It seemed that the evil creatures that appeared now were not worthy of his attention. With the old turtle secretly protecting him, Ji Yufei had no scruples. When he saw the evil corpse flying away, he immediately chased after it using the 8 desolation steps. The 5 worlds revolved around him. With one step, Ji Yufei traveled hundreds of meters. He moved forward as if he was teleporting. In just 7 steps, he caught up with the evil corpse. Jiu Fei stretched out his hands and connected the fire and earth sword lights around him to his hands. Then, he waved them forward, bang! Endless flames rushed out of Jiu Fei's right hand and turned into an endless fire sword that slashed forward. At the same time, a grey light burst out of his left hand, forming a grey divine light that pierced forward. The evil corpse seemed to know that it could not escape. It suddenly turned around and roared. It opened its mouth and spat out a blood-colored corpse pill, which smashed toward Jiu Fei. When the corpse pill flew out of the evil corpse's mouth, it emitted an endless blood light. It was as if a blood-colored sun had suddenly appeared in this evil world. The blood-colored light illuminated the world. A terrifying energy fluctuation surged out of the blood-colored corpse pill. The whole world shook. The dark clouds and blood mist within a radius of more than 10 miles dissipated under the illumination of the blood-colored evil light emitted by the corpse pill. The earth-shattering fire elemental sword chi and the grayish earth elemental sword light that pierced through the evil corpse, under the illumination of the evil light of the corpse core, were like ice and snow under the scorching sun, quickly disintegrating and disappearing into the void. Hey! The old turtle's surprised voice came from the void in the distance. At this time, Jiu Fei could also see that the corpse pill was extraordinary. A purple divine light shot out from between his eyebrows and broke through the void. He wanted to collect the corpse pill into his inner world. However, just as Jiu Fei was about to collect the corpse pill into his inner world, a big hand descended from the sky and grabbed the corpse pill. It was as if a bloody sun was suddenly covered by dark clouds. The myriad of blood-colored lights were immediately blocked. You old turtle! Jiu Fei could not help but feel a burst of anger. He could sense the old turtle's aura. This guy still liked to sneak attack people from behind. Ha ha! Smelly brat, I want this blood pill. As the old turtle spoke, the big hand that grabbed the corpse pill quickly withdrew. Roar! The evil corpse saw that the corpse pill was grabbed by the big hand and immediately roared again and again. It seemed to have gone mad and soared into the sky. A pair of ghostly hands stretched forward in an attempt to intercept the big hand. Stomp! The old turtle's voice came from the void. Then, a big foot appeared from the void and stomped down on the evil corpse. Bang! The evil corpse was directly trampled down from the sky by the big foot. Boom! It smashed a big hole in the blood-colored ground that was covered with white bones. Smelly brat, this evil ghost is yours, haha. After the old turtle collected the corpse pill, it seemed to be very happy and then disappeared into the void. You old turtle that can't die for 10,000 years, you really make me angry. Jiu Fei roared in the direction where the old turtle disappeared. He had already noticed that the most precious thing on the evil corpse was the blood pill. Without the blood pill, the evil corpse simply had no value. The blood pill was a heaven-defying object bred by the evil corpse. As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. The evil corpse was originally a dead object, but the blood pill was born from extreme death and possessed an unimaginable life force. The evil corpse soared up from the ground. Jiu Fei directly pressed down with his palm. Bang! With a bang, the evil corpse was immediately smashed into pieces by Jiu Fei's palm. The evil corpse that had lost its corpse core was no longer able to withstand a single blow. Chapter 451. After Jiu Fei smashed the evil corpse into pieces, the three-clawed flood dragon Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King roared angrily from afar. Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King seemed to be in trouble. Jiu Fei looked in the direction of Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King. A few miles away, a chilly wind was howling and a bloody mist was churning. There was a vast demonic power and an evil aura that made one's heart palpitate. The figures of powerful evil creatures were vaguely visible in the bloody mist. They were engaged in a fierce battle with Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King. Beams of strong light pierced through the yin qi and the bloody mist from time to time, instantly illuminating the terrifying and evil savage ancient region. One had to admit that the ancient savage domain was extremely evil and terrifying during the night of the full moon. The blood-colored moonlight sprinkled down from the sky, and it seemed as if it had drawn out countless evil beings and spirits. Although Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King were extremely powerful and could be considered as great demons, The evil creatures and evil spirits in the savage ancient battlefield were also very powerful. Some evil creatures and evil spirits were extremely powerful, and their strength was comparable to that of a demigod. Boom! A pitch-black demonic hand descended from the sky and smashed down a soaring azure dragon shadow. An evil being with disheveled hair and terrifying demonic chi surging all over its body appeared in the void. In the savage ancient battlefield, there were divine bones that were as translucent as white jade. There were also demon bones that were so black that they glowed with light. There were evil creatures that wandered on the bloody ground. There were figures that were as holy as immortals and demons that were filled with devil chi. The evil creatures and evil spirits that wandered on the savage ancient battlefield were formed by the immortal will of the true demons and immortals that had fallen on the savage ancient battlefield. Most of these evil creatures did not have any intelligence. They could only rely on their sense of life aura to gather around Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King. They instinctively fought with Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King. These evil creatures had powerful soul power and tyrannical strength. However, they did not have intelligence. Even if they were extremely powerful, they were not invincible. Roar! Xiaoqing's furious roar came from afar, and then, Ji Yufei saw a green dragon claw, breaking through the layers of demonic chi, grabbing straight up from below, tearing towards the demonic figure in the sky. That devil shadow was actually just a devil soul. Although it possessed powerful spiritual strength, it didn't have a body of flesh and blood. That devil soul didn't seem to know the danger and didn't retreat. Bam! The azure dragon claw emitted a terrifying demonic power, as if it was forged from azure divine metal. In an instant, the terrifying demonic shadow exploded. Endless demonic chi surged out in all directions like a volcano eruption. In an instant, it enveloped the world, blotting out the sun and causing the world to become so dark that one could not even see their own fingers in front of them. It was as if doomsday had arrived. Ji Yufei sensed many evil auras approaching the battlefield in front of him. It was hard to imagine where these evil creatures had suddenly come from. When he entered the primordial battlefield that day, he didn't sense any evil aura, and Ji Yufei thought that all the evil spirits had been taken into the path of hell by the Millennium Buddhist master. But it turned out that it wasn't the case. On the savage ancient battlefield outside the Hell Realm, there were still countless evil creatures and evil spirits lurking around. These demonic beasts and evil spirits were usually hiding somewhere, but when the moon was full, they would all show themselves. As a result, the entire desolate ancient battlefield turned into a living hell during the full moon. Whoosh! The 5 elements lesser world revolved around Ji Yufei. He used the 8 desolation steps, and as if he was teleporting, he could cover 100 zhong with a single step. His battle intent surged like a rainbow. Ji Yufei could cross the distance of a few li in an instant. He stopped in front of the terrifying demonic aura and was about to break through it to meet up with Xiaoqing. However, at this moment, a gust of chilly wind blew from the side, and all the pores on Ji Yufei's body instantly burst open. He felt a bone-chilling cold drilling straight into his body. He turned around and saw an illusory figure standing in the void around 5 zhong behind him. A pair of cold and emotionless eyes were staring at Ji Yufei. The figure was hazy like smoke, but it emitted an incomparably holy aura. It was an existence of 2 extremes compared to the evil spirits and evil spirits. Ji Yufei did not dare to be careless. Although the figure was emitting a holy aura like an immortal, it was still an evil creature, one with a holy aura. When an immortal and a true demon died, their divine sense and battle intent were not extinguished. They formed an evil creature. The illusory figure emitted a threatening aura. It was definitely not a good creature. Swoosh! Ji Yufei brought a small world of flames in front of him and directly manipulated the small world to envelop the holy figure in front of him. It was a fire elemental world filled with divine flames. It was faint and not a real world. However, it was derived from Ji Yufei's inner world power and the 5 elements Yuan Qi. Although it was not a real fire elemental world, it still had the characteristics of the world. The fire elemental void expanded rapidly. In an instant, it shrouded the world and turned it into a sea of fire. It pressed down on the figure in front of him. The illusory figure emitted an incomparably bright holy light. It was as if there were celestial flowers dancing around him and celestial chi lingering around him. Boom! The figure, who was as holy as an immortal, just stretched out his right hand and pressed it lightly toward the fire elemental world that shrouded over him. The entire fire elemental world suddenly shook violently and then became dim. Ji Yufei was taken aback. The strength of the other party was beyond his imagination. Buzz! Endless golden sword light rushed out. Ji Yufei brought the metal elemental world around him. The power of the metal elemental was surging. Rays of sword light, like heavenly swords, emitted a terrible sword chi and chopped at the illusory holy figure. The terrible figure still stretched out his hand and pressed forward gently. Thousands of golden sword chi collapsed in front of his palm. This soul easily blocked the metal elemental world. Damn it! Ji Yufei was shocked and angry at the same time. The soul in front of him was too powerful. It unexpectedly blocked two of his killing moves, which made him inexplicably shocked and angry. Rotation of the five elements, turn into chaos. Ji Yufei let out a roar and soared into the sky. Following this, the five elements heavens and earth were gathered in front of him, before suppressing the sacred figure down below. Boom! Endless clouds and mist filled the sky. The five elements world expanded rapidly, and a majestic energy burst out inside. The five worlds rotated in the sky. Half of the sky was on fire, and the sea of fire was surging, covering the sky and the earth. In another direction, an endless ocean suddenly emerged high in the sky, turning one side of the world into a frightening swamp. There was also the misty earth chi rolling, forming a huge earth hutu. There was also the endless green divine light soaring into the sky, as if a primitive forest appeared in the sky. The golden light was dazzling, and the endless power of the metal elemental world condensed into thousands of sword hilts dancing in the sky. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The five elements world rotated at the same time, producing endless five elements and five chi. The five elements world shook violently, and the sky fell and the earth cracked. In the five elements world, a terrible gust of wind was even more terrible than the heavenly blade. The terrible power swept toward the terrible figure that emitted a holy aura. Swish! That blurry soul shadow soared into the sky and directly rushed into the five elements world that was shrouding the five directions. The blurry soul shadow exploded with terrifying energy fluctuations that disturbed the entire five elements world. The five elements world rotated, releasing a terrible power of destruction, trying to obliterate the terrible soul shadow. However, the soul shadow showed unparalleled combat power. With a wave of his hand, he shook the five elements world and rushed left and right in the five elements world. Brat, do you need my help? The old turtle's voice sounded in the void. Only his voice could be heard, but no one could see him. No one knew where he was hiding. You old turtle, you'd better go help Xiaoqing and the others, Ji Yufei said snappily. His whole body surged with yuan qi, and a five-colored aura penetrated his body, as if he was wearing a five-colored battlesuit. Controlling the five elements world made him feel extremely strenuous. The soul shadow in the five elements world was really terrible. Under the attack of the soul shadow, the five elements world shook again and again, as if it was about to collapse. Well, then you can slowly play with that evil spirit. Don't say that I didn't remind you, that evil spirit has the strength of a demigod, haha. The old turtle laughed and then ignored Ji Yufei. Demigod. Demigod. When Ji Yufei heard this, he was shocked and his face turned green. He was not arrogant enough to think that he could compete with a demigod. At this time, the endless devil chi quickly receded like a tide, and the devil shadow that had been crushed by Xiaoqing's claw appeared again from the devil chi. In fact, it was difficult to kill these evil creatures and evil spirits without a physical body with a simple attack. Special methods were needed to completely destroy them. Bang! The Chilean demon king rushed over from afar, his whole body emitting endless divine fire. In an instant, the devil shadow that had condensed from the devil chi was enveloped. Roar! A devil's roar sounded in the sea of flames, and endless devil chi erupted from the flames. The devil shadow broke through the divine fire and rushed out. At this time, the evil spirit that had been trapped by Gu Fei's 5 elements world broke through the fire element world with a punch and directly rushed out of the 5 elements world. Gu Fei suffered a great impact and was sent flying thousands of feet away. The illusory figure that seemed as if it could dissipate at any time emitted endless holy brilliance. In an instant, it chased after Gu Fei, then stretched out its right hand and stretched out its 5 fingers, directly grabbing at Gu Fei's head. Chapter 452. That pure and holy figure was extremely powerful and displayed a terrifying battle strength. Not only did it break through Gu Fei's 5 elements and 5 directions world, but it also caught up to Gu Fei in an instant. It stretched out its hand and stretched out its 5 fingers, directly grabbing at Gu Fei's head. The 5 faint and illusory fingers emitted a terrifying wave of energy. It was as if it had turned into a palm of flesh and blood, surrounded by bright brilliance. 5 bright rays of light shot out from the fingers and pierced through the void. Although it hadn't really grabbed Gu Fei's head, it still made Gu Fei's scalp hurt. The 5 fingers of the evil spirit covered one side of the world, making it impossible for Gu Fei to escape. If the 5 fingers pierced through his skull, even if Gu Fei had the 5 elements martial body, it would be difficult for him to escape death. However, Gu Fei wouldn't die tragically from being clawed by that terrifying figure. Swoosh! Without thinking, a bright purple divine light shot out from between Gu Fei's eyebrows and pierced upwards. The purple divine light was condensed from the power of the heaven and earth in his inner world. It had an unfathomable power, and it actually shattered the sharp claws that were clawing downwards. Swoosh! Another divine light shot out from between Gu Fei's eyebrows and slashed across the sky. Wherever the divine light passed, the void collapsed, and it actually directly cut the hazy figure in front of it into 2 pieces at the waist. Roar! The pure and holy evil spirit roared angrily at the sky, its voice shaking the vast sky. The palm that had been shattered by the purple divine light quickly reassembled and then reappeared. The 2 parts of the body that had been cut in 2 at the waist immediately fused together. A strong light flashed, and the evil spirit was intact again, as if it hadn't suffered any damage. Gu Fei quickly flew backwards to avoid it. When he saw that the evil spirit had actually recovered in an instant, he couldn't help but sweat on his forehead. It was really difficult to kill these evil spirits without flesh and blood with a simple attack. Roar! The evil spirit roared again and disappeared. Gu Fei's heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, he left an afterimage on the spot and soared into the sky to avoid it. Boom! The void collapsed, and the evil spirit suddenly appeared where Gu Fei had been. A terrifying power directly shattered the afterimage that Gu Fei had left behind, which had yet to dissipate. So fast. Gu Fei was secretly shocked. That evil spirit's speed was so fast that it seemed like it was teleporting. It was even faster than Gu Fei's 8 desolate steps, causing Gu Fei to feel threatened. After missing its attack, the evil spirit's body suddenly emitted a peng sound. Endless holy splendor emitted from the illusory figure, illuminating the entire world. A terrifying power spread between heaven and earth, and the whole world seemed like it could collapse at any time. The holy light that shot out from the evil spirit's body had a great destructive power. All the blood mist and dark clouds, under the holy light, quickly dissipated in the void like snow. What is this? Gu Fei was shocked. The intense light made his eyes feel like they were being pierced by thousands of sharp needles. He couldn't open his eyes. Not only his eyes, but even his skin felt an intense pain. All his flesh felt like it was about to melt, causing Gu Fei to feel the threat of death. Gu Fei quickly retreated, wanting to rush out of the encirclement of the holy light. He felt that his skin and flesh had already burst open. The terrifying holy light even penetrated his flesh and shone on his bones and internal organs. Cracks appeared on the 5-colored bone body, which was harder than divine iron, and his internal organs were torn apart. Gu Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. Intense pain came from all over his body, from the inside out. His whole body felt like it was about to collapse, as if he would die in the next moment. Is this the power of a demigod? Gu Fei thought to himself. He was about to lose consciousness. Withdraw. At this time, Old Tortoise's voice suddenly came to Ji Yufei's ears. Then, the terrifying holy light that illuminated the world and destroyed everything suddenly disappeared. The terrifying energy fluctuations also disappeared completely. In the void, Ji Yufei's blood-stained figure appeared. Ji Yufei screamed in pain. His body surged with vigorous primordial qi fluctuations. The cracked skin all over his body quickly healed. The blood that flowed out also flowed back and re-entered Ji Yufei's flesh and blood. The injured body quickly recovered and healed. The cracks on the five-colored bone body quickly disappeared. The torn internal organs were also reconstructed. The clotted blood in the body seeped out of the pores and was expelled from the body. In just a few breaths, the injuries on Ji Yufei's body were all healed. His clothes were tattered like a rag hanging on his body. He was covered in blood and looked extremely embarrassed. Life and death were only in an instant. Ji Yufei was shocked. If it wasn't for Old Tortoise taking action in time and taking away the evil spirit, he would probably have died. There was really no comparison between the void controlling realm and the demigod realm. If it was an ordinary void controlling realm cultivator just now, they would have died on the spot. Ji Yufei had the five elements martial body. Although the martial body had not reached great success, in terms of the toughness of the body and the strength of the body's recovery, even a cultivator at the ninth heaven of the void controlling realm would not be able to match him. Even Ji Yufei, who possessed a powerful physique, was nearly crushed by the sacred light. It was imaginable what kind of terrifying consequences would happen to other cultivators if they were exposed to the sacred light. "Ha ha! Brat, I thought you didn't need my help. How about now?" Old Tortoise's figure appeared in the void and looked at Ji Yufei proudly. Sigh. Ji Yufei let out a long sigh and said, "You old tortoise, are you mocking me? Mock me as much as you like. It's not shameful to be defeated by a demigod. It's not shameful." Old Tortoise nodded and said. He was very clear about the terror of a demigod. Ji Yufei's cultivation was only at the peak of the first heaven of the void controlling realm. It was very rare for him to be able to withstand the evil spirit's holy light technique for a while. If it was someone else, they would have turned into a wisp of smoke after being illuminated by the holy light. Even their primordial spirit would not be able to escape and would be annihilated. Old Tortoise no longer made fun of Ji Yufei and mocked Ji Yufei. He looked up at the sky and his face became solemn. He murmured, "Midnight is approaching. The really powerful guy is about to appear." What? Ji Yufei was shocked after hearing Old Tortoise's words. The really powerful guy? What kind of existence was that? It was hard to imagine. It seemed that the evil beings and evil spirits that appeared now were just some small characters. The really powerful evil beings and evil spirits had yet to appear. The savage, desolate ancient battlefield was truly bizarre. The Naraka Tao of the Six Paths of Reincarnation diagram refined by Lord Buddha was in the depths of this savage ancient battlefield. It was a terrifying hell. However, outside the purgatory realm, the savage ancient battlefield that spanned thousands of miles would turn into a hellish world when the full moon arrived. Countless evil spirits and evil creatures would appear out of nowhere and wander around the blood-colored evil land. It's almost time. Stop playing around and get rid of that evil being. Old Tortoise shouted at the place where Xiaoqing and Qilin Demon King were. At this time, Qilin Demon King and Xiaoqing were working together to fight the terrifying demonic shadow. They were locked in a stalemate. The mighty and terrifying energy shook the world. Demonic clouds rolled, demonic qi soared into the sky, and raging flames soared. Three figures moved quickly in the void, striking out layers of energy waves in an attempt to destroy the other party. Roar. After hearing Old Tortoise's words, a dragon's roar came from the battlefield. Then, two green dragon claws the size of small mountains broke through the layers of demonic clouds and tore at the demonic shadow in the clouds. The dragon claws emitted a terrifying green divine light. Wherever they passed, the void was torn apart and shrouded the world. Bang! Behind the demonic shadow, a Qilin divine beast emitting monstrous flames directly rushed toward the demonic shadow in the demonic clouds. Endless demonic chi evaporated and dissipated under the divine flames. The demonic shadow let out a strange cry and then punched forward with its right hand while waving its left hand backward. Surging demonic chi rushed out from the demonic shadow's hands like a stormy sea. Boom! Boom! Two loud sounds rang out almost at the same time. The surging power shook the heavens and the earth, and the dazzling light illuminated the entire world. The huge wave of air caused the sky to seem as if it was a hurricane, and a great pressure enveloped the surroundings. The mighty aftershocks caused the earth to tremble. Xiaoqing flew backward and roared. Qilin Demon King's strength was stronger than Xiaoqing's. He directly broke the demonic shadow's palm power and knocked it away. The Qilin Demon King was a great demon at the peak of the ninth heaven of the void controlling realm. His strength was extremely tyrannical. He was surrounded by raging fire, and the whole sky was burned red. Endless demonic aura dissipated under the divine fire. The demonic aura was as heavy as a mountain, and the vast waves of demonic power spread out. At this time, Qilin Demon King's body emitted a blazing light. The monstrous divine fire was the divine fire of the five elements, and it seemed to burn the void. It was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Although the demonic shadow had no flesh and blood, it was still knocked away by the extremely powerful Qilin Demon King, and its body almost collapsed. After knocking away the demonic shadow, Qilin Demon King continued to pursue it. He opened his mouth and spat out a divine flame light, which penetrated the demonic shadow's abdomen. The divine flame light was like a heavenly sword of fire, and it had great power. The demonic shadow suffered a great impact, and its body quickly dimmed. Seeing this, Ji Yufei knew that the demonic shadow was no match for Qilin Demon King. It was most likely to be taken away by Qilin Demon King. Powerful soul energy ripples emitted from the demonic figure. This level of soul energy caused Ji Yufei to be extremely envious. If he could refine this demonic figure, his cultivation would most likely break through to the second heavenly layer of the void controlling realm. Chapter 453. Boom! A ball of fire exploded in the void and instantly enveloped the world. A red flame divine beast the size of a small mountain loomed in the sea of fire. Within a radius of 10 miles, all the dark clouds, evil aura, and blood mist quickly dissipated under the burning of the raging flame divine fire. The terrifying heat seemed to be able to melt everything, even the void was distorted. The demonic aura soared into the sky, and the fire burned the heaven and earth. Everyone retreated far away. There were a few figures of evil beings and evil spirits that flipped into the blazing divine fire. In an instant, they were burned to death by the divine fire. The demonic shadow, which had been seriously injured, was suddenly enveloped by the raging flame divine fire. Roar! A roar came from the sea of fire, and then endless devil chi surged out of the flames. A demonic shadow broke through the raging flame divine fire that shrouded the world and rushed out. However, just as the demonic shadow rushed out of the sea of fire, a huge and ferocious beast head stretched out of the sea of fire. It spat out the raging flame divine light and rolled towards the demonic shadow. Without any suspense, the demonic shadow was wrapped up by the raging flame divine light and swallowed by the divine beast in the sea of fire. Ji Yufei was shocked to see this scene. He had to get to know the fire Qilin again. This fire Qilin was too strong. A great demon at the peak of the ninth heaven of the imperial void realm was really terrifying. Ji Yufei admitted that he was definitely no match for the Qilin Demon King. Bang! 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 At this time, heavy footsteps came from afar. The earth seemed to be shaking with the footsteps, as if an ancient giant was striding towards here. Oh no, the big guy has appeared. When the old turtle heard the heavy footsteps, his expression suddenly changed. He seemed to know what kind of existence was approaching here. The raging flame divine fire that filled the sky retreated like the tide, and all of it was submerged into the huge body of the Qilin Demon King. The crimson scales were covered with flames. Swish! Swoosh! Xiaoqing and Qilin Demon King rushed toward Old Tortoise. At this time, Ji Yufei saw a shocking scene. Under the blood-colored moonlight, a huge figure like a mountain appeared in the distance. That figure was simply too huge. Its body towered into the clouds, and its head was as large as a mountain. Its eyes shone with a blood-red light, and it spewed demonic chi from its mouth. Every step it took caused the ground to tremble. This. Jiu Fei's jaw dropped. This figure was even larger than the Dharma idols of the true devil and the ancient almighty beings he had seen in the northern reaches. Its huge body gave off a terrifying aura. It was like an ancient mountain moving on the ground. The demonic chi it exhaled formed a terrifying storm. Old Turtle's expression was extremely solemn. He directly opened his inner world and stored Xiaoqing and the Kailin Demon King inside. Then, he said to Jiu Fei, "Come in quickly. Even immortals and gods can't fight against such an existence." "What is that thing?" Jiu Fei asked. It was hard to imagine that there was a terrifying evil creature comparable to the ancient almighty beings in this savage ancient battlefield. "I don't know how these things came into being," Old Turtle said. "However, although these evil creatures are powerful, they don't have much intelligence. They only move based on instinct." Bam! 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 Just as Jiu Fei and Old Turtle were talking, the huge figure emitted a terrifying fluctuation. With one step, it covered thousands of feet and was already nearby. Swoosh! Jiu Fei did not dare to hesitate any longer. He used the 8 desolate steps and rushed towards the old tortoise. That evil being was comparable to an ancient almighty. If he did not enter the old tortoise's inner world, there would only be one outcome for him, and that was death. Old Turtle opened his inner world and stored Jiu Fei inside. Boom! At this moment, the terrifying giant had already stretched out its right hand and grabbed at Old Turtle. Although the two were separated by 10 to 30 miles, the giant's palm arrived in an instant. The heavens and the earth trembled and cracks appeared in the void. Just a casual palm strike was enough to shatter the void. It was as if a huge mountain had descended from the sky and bombarded the old tortoise. The mighty astral wind swept up countless dried bones and the blood-colored ground was cracking. Raw. Too strong. Old Turtle felt like he could barely breathe. An endless pressure pressed him down from the sky to the ground. Before the giant palm hit the ground, the blood-colored ground had already begun to sink. An incomparably huge palm print appeared on the ground. Boom! The gigantic palm ferociously smashed into the ground, causing a heaven-shaking explosion. Dust rose high into the sky, and an astral wind swept out. The ground in a 10-kilometer radius cracked, and countless bones were shattered. It was as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting apart. It was incomparably terrifying. Inside Old Turtle's fairyland-like inner world, Old Turtle appeared in the void in a sorry state. His face was covered in dust and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. The moment before the terrifying giant's palm hit him, the old tortoise shattered the void and entered his inner world in time. Even so, his body suffered a great impact and was slightly injured. Boom! The entire inner world suddenly shook violently, as if something was bombarding Old Turtle's inner world from the outside. Everyone inside, including Old Turtle, felt inexplicably frightened. How is this possible? Old Turtle muttered to himself with a face full of disbelief. He had already guessed that it was the terrifying giant that shook his inner world. Boom! The entire heaven and earth shook violently. The divine palace in the sky shook violently and almost fell from the sky. Countless boulders rolled down from the spiritual peak. It was as if an unfathomable and terrifying existence was trying to blast Old Turtle's inner world out of the void. Could it be that the giant outside could sense the inner world in the void? The Old Turtle hurriedly isolated the aura of his inner world and released rays of divine light to form mysterious demonic patterns, sealing his inner world in the void. The entire inner world, from the sky to the earth, was vaguely covered with demonic patterns. These demonic patterns completely sealed the aura of his inner world within his inner world, preventing it from leaking out. Sure enough, when Old Turtle sealed his inner world and isolated the aura of his inner world, the attack stopped. Inner worlds were created by powerful cultivators with supreme magical power and magical powers. They could create a world and open up the void, then form a space independent of the big world. Ordinary cultivators, even immortals, would find it difficult to sense the existence of inner worlds. However, some ancient almighties were powerful and had great magical powers. They had unfathomable means and could sense the existence of inner worlds. These ancient almighties could even blast their inner worlds out of the void, or directly break the void and enter their opponent's inner world. There was no doubt that the strength of the giant outside was comparable to that of an ancient almighty. It was hard to imagine that there was such a powerful evil creature in the ancient barbaric battlefield. It was no wonder that for thousands of years, many experts had entered the ancient barbaric battlefield, but none of them came back. They couldn't even cause a ripple before disappearing. Jiu Fei, Xiaoqing, and the Chilean Monster King had long been aware of Old Turtle's existence. After Old Turtle sealed the inner world, they rushed over. "Old Turtle, are you okay?" Jiu Fei asked worriedly. The evil creature outside was too powerful. He was very worried about Old Turtle's safety. "I'm fine." Old Turtle wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said calmly, "If I can refine that evil creature outside, my cultivation level can recover at least a little bit." The Old Turtle's eyes shone with a blazing light. 99% of his cultivation level was forcefully eroded by the virtual sky world's unique formation, and he almost lost his life. What he lacked now was not the realm of his cultivation level, but power. As long as his body had enough primordial chi to replenish it, his cultivation level could recover quickly. One should know that the old tortoise was a powerhouse of the demon race back in the day and had an unimaginable background. If he had recovered even half of his cultivation base, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in this world where immortals and gods were extinct. "Don't even think about it," Jiu Fei said. He didn't think Old Turtle had the ability to refine that evil creature of the ancient almighty level. Even Old Turtle would have to bear a grudge against a big guy of that level. "As long as you can refine the mountain and river cauldron, it's not impossible." Old Turtle looked at Jiu Fei with a faint smile and a somewhat strange expression. "Refine the mountain and river cauldron?" Jiu Fei was shocked and stared at Old Turtle with wide eyes. He hadn't really come into contact with the cauldron's soul all this time. Refining the mountain and river cauldron was easier said than done. "Don't look like that, okay? I've prepared a lot of supplements for you to improve your cultivation level. The higher your cultivation level, the easier it will be to refine the mountain and river cauldron." Old Turtle opened his mouth and spat out a white jade cauldron. That white jade cauldron was shrouded in celestial energy and emitted a hazy glow. It was extremely extraordinary. It was refined from a piece of divine jade, and on the cauldron, there were natural demonic runes. Those demonic runes seemed to be naturally formed. The white jade cauldron was only the size of a fist. Old Turtle took it and opened the lid. As the lid was opened, a boom was heard and figures rushed out of the cauldron. After those figures rushed out of the jade cauldron, they appeared in the void. Every single one of them gave off extremely powerful soul power undulations. Jiu Fei and the others were shocked. This small white jade cauldron actually contained 7 evil spirits and evil creatures that were comparable to demigods. This made him feel a strong sense of oppression. Jiu Fei recognized that amongst the 7 evil spirits and evil beings, the evil spirit that emitted a pure and holy aura that was vast like an ocean was precisely the evil spirit that caused him to fall into a life and death situation. Jiu Fei noticed that there were demonic marks vaguely visible on every soul shadow. The 7 evil spirits and evil beings comparable to demigods were all sealed by the Old Turtle's demonic marks and floated in the air. Chapter 454. The Old Tortoise, whose cultivation had been restored to the demon god realm, was extremely powerful. He took advantage of the full moon night in the savage ancient battlefield, when all the evil spirits and evil beings were out, and subdued 7 evil spirits and evil beings. Every evil being and evil spirit exuded a terrifying soul fluctuation. Some were as holy as immortals, and some were faint and illusory figures that seemed to be surrounded by immortal chi. Some were surging with demonic chi, and there were thousands of shadows of demons that appeared. There were also skeletons that were covered in white bones that were shining with crystal clear light, and terrifying evil corpses that were clad in ancient battle armor, and the blood on the armor had turned dark brown. The 7 evil spirits and evil beings exuded an energy fluctuation that was as vast as the sea and as heavy as a mountain. They were definitely terrifying existences of the demigod realm. When Ji Yufei saw this scene and sensed the mighty energy fluctuation in front of him, he could not help but be secretly shocked. If he encountered any one of these 7 evil beings and evil spirits, he would definitely not be a match for them. The existence of the demigod realm was still very far away from him. A peerless expert of the first heaven of the royal void realm would not even have the power to fight back when facing a demigod. The demigod realm could be said to be the earth immortals of the Tenglong continent. They possessed unfathomable power and were terrifying experts that had truly stepped onto the road of immortality. Brat, I will leave 3 of the 7 evil beings and evil spirits for you. According to my estimation, after completely refining the soul power of the 3 evil beings and evil beings, your cultivation should be able to be promoted to the 3rd heaven of the royal void realm. The old tortoise said to Ji Yufei. Hearing this, Ji Yufei's face revealed a contemplative and hesitant expression. He also frowned as he weighed the pros and cons. One should know that the old tortoise used this method to improve his cultivation and strength. In fact, it was a matter of pulling up seedlings to help them grow. It seemed to have a great attraction. Everyone wanted to obtain great power without going through arduous cultivation. However, this wasn't necessarily a good thing for cultivators. If one didn't go through all kinds of hardships to cultivate their strength, they might be able to obtain an incomparably powerful strength in a short period of time, which would be very beneficial to them. However, the external power would shackle the development of their own strength, making it very difficult for them to make further breakthroughs on the path of cultivation, causing them to lose the qualifications to aspire to the top of the omnipotent realm. You don't need to worry. I can already tell that your cultivation level has long since surpassed your actual strength. Increasing your power won't cause you any harm. The turtle seemed to have figured out what Ji Yufei was worried about. Upon hearing this, Ji Yufei's tightly furrowed brows immediately relaxed. His comprehension of the Great Path imprint had already caused a change in his state of mind. Just as the old tortoise had said, his realm had long surpassed the current cultivation of the 1st level of the void controlling realm. He was currently facing such a problem. As he continued to comprehend the great Tao brand, his state of mind was improving. Moreover, the speed of improvement had already surpassed the speed of improvement of his cultivation and strength. This made Ji Yufei feel that he had the will but the strength was insufficient. To solve this problem, the solution was actually very simple. That was to break through the current shackles of cultivation. To break through the shackles of cultivation, one needed to accumulate power. After accumulating enough power, one would then attack the hidden latch in the body. When one broke through the hidden latch, it was time to open another treasure in the body. The human body was like a treasure, containing all kinds of unpredictable power. To release all kinds of power, the only way was to cultivate, especially the cultivation of martial arts. Alright, that's it. Do you think I'll harm you? The old tortoise saw that although Ji Yufei's face was no longer tense, he still looked like he was deep in thought. He couldn't help but feel a little displeased. Ji Yufei nodded helplessly. He really didn't want to use this method to improve his strength, but he had to admit that the old tortoise's method was actually the most effective and fastest way to improve his cultivation and strength. Brat, don't be so reluctant. Back in the day, even if others came to me with treasures and asked me to help them improve their strength, I couldn't be bothered with them. The old tortoise raised its head and said arrogantly with its nostrils almost facing the sky. I know. You don't have to show off your glorious past all the time. Ji Yufei smiled bitterly. A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. It seemed like the old tortoise wasn't a real man back then. Let's begin then. The old tortoise blushed and said. He didn't let Ji Yufei say anything else. He waved his hand and pulled over an evil spirit that exuded an infinite sacred aura. He then directly smashed the evil spirit's body and injected its vast soul power directly into Ji Yufei's body. In front of the old tortoise, even demigod-level evil spirits and demonic beings couldn't resist at all. You old tortoise! Ji Yufei was taken aback and shouted. However, at that moment, his body trembled violently as the soul power penetrated his body. He felt as if a life had entered his body. Ji Yufei was inexplicably shocked. How could this be? Could it be that these evil spirits and demonic beings had been reborn from the dead and had derived life? What Jiu Fei didn't know was that these evil spirits and demonic beings were all formed from the broken remnant souls of the savage ancient battlefield and possessed extremely powerful soul power. The soul power was life and the origin of life. The spirit was the life mark of a living being and the most fundamental thing of a living being. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with the soul power entering his body. However, when the old tortoise injected all the soul power from the demigod-level evil spirit into Jiu Fei's body, Jiu Fei's expression changed drastically. His body trembled violently as beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on his forehead. His face was as pale as a sheet of white paper. It felt like countless earthworms were moving under his skin. The life that had entered his body seemed to be unwilling to enter Jiu Fei's body. It struggled violently in an attempt to break free from Jiu Fei's body. As a result, Jiu Fei was the one who suffered the most. A powerful soul force surged within his body, causing his meridians to shatter, followed by his organs and flesh to rupture. In just a few breaths' time, Jiu Fei's body was on the verge of collapsing. The endless pain that came from his body almost drove him insane. His mind was on the verge of collapsing. His flesh began to crack and blood began to seep out. Jiu Fei's appearance was extremely terrifying and ferocious. Jiu Fei. Xiaoqing couldn't help but cry out when he saw Jiu Fei in extreme pain. He hurriedly said to the old tortoise, "Master, if you don't do something, Jiu Fei's body will explode from the soul power." The three-clawed serpent Xiaoqing had spent some time with Jiu Fei when it was still a Xiaoqing serpent. When it saw that Jiu Fei was in a desperate situation, it couldn't help but feel anxious. Xiaoqing had already become the disciple of the old tortoise. Only the fire Qilin, with its pair of flaming eyes, looked back and forth at the 6 evil spirits and evil beings imprisoned in the void. It didn't even look at Jiu Fei. "Hehe, brat, your body doesn't seem to be that strong." The old tortoise laughed and waved its hand, producing demon runes that branded on Jiu Fei's body. The violent soul power in Jiu Fei's body was immediately suppressed. Jiu Fei's body, which was on the verge of collapsing, no longer cracked. Roar! Jiu Fei roared at the sky. Blood oozed out of his 7 orifices and his long hair fluttered in the wind. He looked extremely terrifying and ferocious. At the same time, a powerful wave of Yuan Qi surged from Jiu Fei's body. A 5-colored aura emerged from his body. He fully mobilized the 5 elements Yuan Qi in his body, trying to refine the extremely huge soul power in his body. However, the soul power was too strong. It was a terrible evil spirit with the strength of a demigod. If the old tortoise had not branded the ancient demon runes on Jiu Fei's body would have exploded from the soul power and he would be dead. Even so, Jiu Fei still felt that his body was collapsing and melting. His muscles, bones, flesh, and blood were mercilessly torn by the soul power in his body. It was 100 times more painful than death by 1,000 cuts. Ah! Jiu Fei let out a shrill scream and fell directly from the sky. With a boom, he smashed into the forest below. The old tortoise's inner world was full of spiritual energy and flourishing vegetation. Forests and spiritual peaks could be seen everywhere. Even in the dense forest, one could see the figures of birds and beasts. "Each of you collect 2 evil spirits and cultivate," the old tortoise said to Xiaoqing and the Qilin monster king. "Thank you, master. Thank you, master." Xiaoqing and the Qilin monster king were overjoyed. 2 evil spirits and evil creatures comparable to demigods. If they could refine them, they might be able to break through their current cultivation shackles. "Master, Jiu Fei, he." Xiaoqing was still concerned about Jiu Fei's safety and wanted the old tortoise to ease Jiu Fei's pain. "Don't worry. With me here, nothing will happen to him." The old tortoise waved his hand and interrupted Xiaoqing's words. Roar! Ah! Ah! At this time, Jiu Fei's terrible scream was heard from the forest below. It made everyone's hair stand on end. Bang! Boom! Crash! The entire forest shook as towering trees fell from the sky one after another. Jiu Fei was like a ferocious beast that had gone berserk, rampaging through the forest below. Although Xiaoqing was very worried about Jiu Fei, since his master had said so, he could not say anything else. He then collected the two evil spirits and flew toward the chaotic area. The Chilean Monster King also collected the two evil spirits and evil creatures and rushed into the distance. The Chilean Monster King was extremely excited. He was only one step away from the demigod realm. It was too difficult to take this step, but now there was a chance to become a demigod. The soul power of the two evil spirits and evil creatures should be able to help him break through his current cultivation shackles. It was no wonder that the Chilean Monster King was ecstatic. Although the lifespan of the demon clan was relatively long, if it was difficult for them to break through to the demigod realm, their lifespan would come to an end. The demigod realm was an expert who had seen through life and death and embarked on the path of immortality. Their lifespan was almost endless and could be said to be as long as heaven and earth. Of course, this was an assumption under the premise that nothing unexpected happened. In the Tinglong continent, there were still a few people who could kill demigods. The old tortoise was one of them. However, to break through from the void-controlling realm to the half-god realm was not just an ordinary level of difficulty. It was very difficult, extremely difficult. It was so difficult that the number of cultivators in the entire Tinglong continent who could reach this realm could be counted on 10 fingers. Brat, be careful. Don't ruin the scenery of my inner world. The old tortoise shouted down. A part of the forest had been destroyed by Gu Fei. Chapter 455. His body was torn apart, his bones were broken, and even his soul seemed to have fallen into an endless hell, being burned by hellfire. The huge soul power sealed in Gu Fei's body by the old turtle not only destroyed Gu Fei's body but also tortured his soul, making him feel as if his soul would dissipate in the next moment. The endless pain that his body and soul endured almost made Gu Fei collapse. He roared, crushed his teeth, pulled out his hair, and slammed into the woodland, rolling on the ground. At this time, the old turtle stood in the air and shot down demon marks. The demon marks sank into the ground around Gu Fei, and then emerged from the ground, forming a formation. The demon marks emitted bursts of demon power, activated the formation, and attracted the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, forming an unpredictable power that sealed off a part of the world, trapping Gu Fei in a space with a radius of less than 10 feet. Demon marks, like runes, could trigger the momentum of heaven and earth and exert unimaginable power. After laying down the demon marks, the old turtle ignored Gu Fei and left directly. He was not worried that Gu Fei would die because he knew that a warrior's vitality was much stronger than that of an ordinary cultivator. With Gu Fei's current cultivation, as long as his body did not collapse, his life would not be in danger. The source of a cultivator's strength was their physical body. The physical body contained boundless essence and vitality. Even if a cultivator had half their body destroyed, they could rely on their strong vitality to regenerate their flesh and blood. They would not die. Although Gu Fei's body was not strong enough to regenerate his body after it collapsed, the current Gu Fei could recover no matter what degree of injury his body suffered as long as he did not suffer a special attack. In other words, his flesh and bones were torn and shattered. As long as his body did not collapse completely, he could not die even if he wanted to. Roar. Gu Fei howled in pain as blood oozed out from his 7 apertures. Boundless yuan qi and soul power rippled out from his body, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Bang! Gu Fei directly collided with the force field formed by the demonic inscriptions. Ripples visible to the naked eye appeared in the void. The demonic inscriptions on the ground emitted a bright light, forming a force field that dissolved the force field of Gu Fei's collision. Gu Fei was sent flying by the rebounding force and rolled on the ground. Rays of strong light surged out from his body. The 5 elemental yuan qi in his body could not suppress the soul energy that the old tortoise had sent into his body. His skin was cracking, and blood that emitted a strange red light seeped out. Gu Fei's blood also contained a large amount of yuan qi and emitted a faint blood light. Every time Gu Fei's body was about to explode from the vast soul power in his body, the demon marks on his body would emit a bright demonic light and suppress the soul power that erupted. Just as Gu Fei was begging for death, in the old turtle's inner world, 2 powerful waves of demonic power also appeared in 2 places near the chaos zone. In one place, raging flames soared into the sky, burning half the sky red. The terrifyingly high temperature caused the void to distort. In another place, a green demonic light rushed out. Demonic chi soared into the sky, shaking a part of the world. The Chilean demon king and Xiaoqing were refining evil spirits and evil beings, trying to use the soul power to break through the life and death hidden latch and break through the current cultivation shackles. Ji Yufei's body was imprinted with the ancient demon marks by the old turtle. Although the soul power in his body was extremely powerful, it could not break out of his body and burst Ji Yufei's body. Soon, Ji Yufei's screams became hoarse, and then gradually weakened. Everything within a radius of 10 feet was enveloped by the vast yuan qi and soul power from his body. The five-colored aura was flashing, and the holy brilliance was flowing, as if a five-colored giant egg had enveloped Ji Yufei. A faint moan came from the five-colored divine egg. The yuan qi and soul power surging out of Ji Yufei's body were all sealed in the void within a radius of 10 feet by the demon marks carved by the old turtle on the ground, not allowing the yuan qi and soul power to leak out. Time passed quickly, and half a month had passed. The energy fluctuations emitted by Ji Yufei's five-colored divine egg were getting stronger and stronger. The five-colored aura and the holy soul power were sealed in the void within a radius of 10 feet by the demon marks on the ground, and they were so thick that they almost turned into a substance. Ji Yufei was like a spirit bred in the five-colored divine egg, gradually becoming stronger. The day the egg broke was the day he was born. The demonic power fluctuations coming from the edge of the chaos zone of the inner world where Xiaoqing and the Chilean demon king were also gradually becoming stronger over the past half a month. It had to be said that soul power, for cultivators, had a miraculous effect of improving their cultivation and strength. It was no wonder that the cultivators of the evil Tao advocated killing and destruction. The demons who had achieved success in cultivation were all peerless demons who had killed thousands of miles and even tens of thousands of miles. They killed the common people and refined the soul power to improve their cultivation and strength, unlike the cultivators of the righteous Tao, who absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth all the time to cultivate the supreme immortal Tao and become an immortal. Time passed day by day. Half a month, a year. The place where Ji Yufei was still filled with the five-colored aura and surging soul power. During this year, the old turtle would come to the vicinity of Ji Yufei every few months, observe for a while, and then leave immediately. Then, he would go to the place where Xiaoqing and the Chilean demon king were in seclusion to take a look. The old turtle was not someone who could stay idle. After seeing that Ji Yufei, Xiaoqing, and the Chilean demon king were fine, he took his corpse general doppelganger, opened the inner world, and walked out. It had been a year. Ji Yufei, Xiaoqing, and the Chilean demon king had been cultivating in the old turtle's inner world for a year. At the place where Ji Yufei was, a five-colored ball of light like the sun emitted endless five-colored divine light, illuminating the whole world. The fluctuation of the soul power was gradually weakening, but the fluctuation of the five elements yuan qi was getting stronger and stronger. This was a good sign, which proved that Ji Yufei was gradually refining the soul power. At the place where Xiaoqing was, endless cyan demonic qi rushed out, covering a radius of 100 miles, as if there was a peerless demon lurking in the demonic qi, emitting a powerful aura that made people's hearts palpitate. The place where the Chilean demon king was turned into a sea of fire. The blazing divine fire covered the whole world, turning the area within 100 miles into a barren land. Boundless divine flames seemed to be igniting the void, causing it to twist and distort. Heaven and earth trembled, and the demonic fluctuations emanating from the sea of flames were so powerful that the ground near the center of the sea of flames began to melt into lava. It was unknown when it started, but Ji Yufei felt that the pain from his body and soul was gradually weakening. Then, he naturally immersed himself in the mysterious realm of cultivation. He operated his mysterious art and began to refine the soul power in his body. However, the soul power was too strong. He didn't know how much time had passed and how much time had passed. Only 1,000th of the soul power in his body had been refined. However, this 1,000th of the soul power had given him an unimaginable harvest. He felt that his divine sense seemed to have materialized, as if it was about to fly out of his body. Rays of 5-colored divine light shone out of his body. His soul power went straight to the origin, strengthening his divine soul and physical body. Ji Fei continued to refine the soul power in his body. On this day, suddenly there was a loud bang, as if there was a sudden clap of thunder in his mind. Then, he felt that a certain door in his body had been opened. At this moment, his body seemed to have become a bottomless black hole, producing a strong suction force, continuously devouring the endless spiritual qi and soul power. Ji Fei broke through from the first heaven of the royal void to the second heaven of the royal void. With the breakthrough of the cultivation shackles, Ji Fei seemed to have opened a bottomless pit, and his body was madly devouring the spiritual qi and soul power of the world. The speed of refining soul power suddenly increased by at least 10 times. The 5-colored divine light shrouding his body began to dim, and gradually sank into Ji Fei's body. In the 5-colored divine egg, Ji Fei's whole body was shining with a precious light. His whole body's essence, qi, and spirit had reached a level that was previously untouchable, as if his body had become a saint. Powerful energy flowed within his body that flickered with divine light. It was like a surging river, and it was like a torrential river. It made him feel as if he had endless energy. Everything was not over yet. Ji Fei's cultivation had broken through to the second heaven of the royal void. Although his body did not undergo another transformation, the amount of yuan qi that his body could contain had increased to a level that even he did not know. The surging power constantly flowed in his meridians, muscles, bones, and flesh, and then dispersed to every part of his body, smelting into his body. In the next 10 days and 10 nights, the process of Ji Fei's body devouring the spiritual qi of the world and refining soul power never stopped. The endless yuan qi was tempering his body, and he could clearly feel the subtle changes that had taken place in his body. In the end, every inch of Ji Fei's skin became crystal clear like divine jade, full of explosive and terrifying power. His bones emitted a 5-colored glow, and all the meridians in his body seemed to have been divinized, appearing from his flesh and blood like dense luminous threads. Ji Fei felt that his physique could be said to have improved a lot compared to before. This was really a world of difference between each realm. Cultivation was like ascending to the sky, and breaking through to a higher realm was like ascending to the next heaven. Ji Fei was surprised to find that the enormous soul power in his body had been refined by more than half, and the endless yuan qi that the soul power had transformed into still did not fill the big hole in his body. In this way, after another 10 days, the 5-colored divine light outside Ji Fei's body had shrunk to less than 10 feet, and the light was dim. And the soul power that the old tortoise had injected into his body had been refined by him until there was not a trace left. When Ji Fei opened his eyes, 2 bright divine lights shot out from his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, the 5-colored divine light that shrouded his body immediately entered his body. When everything returned to normal, Ji Fei was shocked to discover that he had advanced to the peak of the second heavenly layer of the void-controlling realm. He was only a step away from the third heavenly layer, and it seemed like he could make a breakthrough at any time. Chapter 456. Ji Fei stood up from the ground. Then, just as he was about to leave, tragedy struck. "Old tortoise, you bastard." Ji Fei soared into the sky. Before he could fly more than 10 zhong, it was as if he had hit his head on a transparent wall, and his nose was almost crooked from the impact. He smashed down from the sky. Boom! The entire ground trembled 3 times, and the ground seemed to have become as hard as divine iron. It smashed Ji Fei until he was dizzy, and all the bones in his body almost fell apart. Then, Ji Fei was extremely displeased. He was extremely displeased to find that he was sealed within a circumference of 10 zhong and could not get out. "Old tortoise, you undying old tortoise, hurry up and get out." Ji Fei's face turned green. This place was simply a prison, and an unbreakable prison. Front, back, left, right, up, down, in every direction, Ji Fei encountered great resistance. It was difficult to walk out of this circumference of 10 zhong, and this made him go crazy. Ji Fei sneered, and then directly punched out. Brilliant divine light erupted from his fist, and his entire fist was like a small sun that emitted endless golden light as it punched forward. Boom! With a loud bang, the vast and ferocious fist force shook the void, and transparent ripples visible to the naked eye spread out in front of Ji Yufei's fist. An unfathomable force not only blocked his fist force, but also reflected it back, causing Ji Yufei to stagger back 3 steps before he could stop the momentum. Ji Yufei was taken aback. His cultivation base had improved by leaps and bounds, and the power of his punch could shake the heavens and earth. Even the treasures of martial cultivators would probably be destroyed. However, he was unable to break through this sealing force. When the power of Ji Yufei's fist spread out, numerous demonic patterns appeared on the ground, emitting a powerful demonic aura that triggered the power of heaven and earth, dispelling the power of Ji Yufei's fist. The array that was set up by the demon inscription triggered the great power of heaven and earth. Attacking the array was the same as attacking a part of the world. With Ji Yufei's current cultivation, it was difficult for him to destroy a part of the world. Ji Yufei could already tell that although the demon inscriptions that appeared on the ground seemed messy, they actually formed a formation, a simple ancient demon clan formation. Won't we be able to get out if we erase the demon marks on the ground? Ji Yufei thought that if he erased the demonic runes, the array formation would naturally lose its effect. Thinking of this, he directly extended his right hand and pressed towards the demonic runes on the ground in front of him. He wanted to erase the demonic runes on the ground. A vast palm force surged in front of his palm. Bam! With a loud bang, Ji Yufei's palm force fiercely imprinted on the demonic runes in front of him. However, it was unable to erase the demonic runes on the ground. The ground was as hard as divine iron, and the demonic runes were the patterns on the divine iron. Even with Ji Yufei's current cultivation, it was difficult for him to erase them. What should I do? This time, Ji Yufei's expression did not look so good. He could not break the power of the seal, so he could only stay in the seal obediently and wait for the arrival of the old tortoise. It was unknown whether Ji Yufei was unlucky or the old tortoise had gone somewhere to harm the people again. Ji Yufei waited for 3 days and 3 nights in a row, but he did not even see the shadow of the old tortoise. Where the hell did the old guy go? Ji Yufei thought to himself. He had already sat cross-legged in the power of the seal again, operating the mysterious art and consolidating his cultivation. During these 3 days, Ji Yufei sensed 2 powerful auras coming from afar. He was very familiar with both auras. From time to time, beams of green light and demonic clouds rushed up from the east. From the west came the fluctuation of the Chilean Demon King's power of fire. In the west, flames soared into the sky, and the divine flames of raging flames covered half the sky. When Ji Yufei sensed the 2 powerful auras, he could not help but be secretly shocked. The auras emitted by Xiaoqing and the Chilean Demon King had long surpassed the void controlling realm. In other words, they only needed 1 more step to break through the shackles, understand the secrets of life and death, and become a demigod with an almost unlimited lifespan. Xiaoqing and the Chilean Demon King did not have the slightest intention of stopping. The evil spirits and evil things in their hands had not been completely refined. Moreover, they had not made a breakthrough in their cultivation. On the 5th day, the old tortoise appeared shakily in his inner world with the wine jar in his hand. He reeked of alcohol, but no one knew where he went to have fun. When the old tortoise saw Ji Yufei, his eyes suddenly widened and his face was full of disbelief. He instantly sobered up from his drunken stupor. How is this possible? Kid, I didn't misjudge you. It only took you a year to refine that evil spirit and use its soul power. You can be considered one of those freaks, old tortoise said in surprise. You're one of those freaks, old tortoise said in surprise. A year has passed. Ji Yufei was taken aback. There was no day or night in cultivation. He knew that some people's time in seclusion could be counted in years, decades, or even decades. However, Ji Yufei had never had such an experience. He could actually cultivate for a whole year in this place with a radius of about 10 feet without taking a break. This was really unimaginable. Hee. The old tortoise chuckled and looked up and down at Ji Yufei with his pair of bright eyes. The old tortoise's gaze made him feel a little scared. What do you want? Ji Yufei put his hands in front of his chest and took 2 steps back. His face was full of panic, like a young girl being bullied by a bully. You! Old Tortoise stared at Ji Yufei and suddenly thought of something. P2E, P2E, P2E. You brat, can you stop having such filthy thoughts in your head? I, Old Tortoise, am a normal male. I will never like someone who is also a male. I'm relieved. Ji Yufei breathed a sigh of relief. It would be bad if the Old Tortoise saw that he was extraordinarily handsome and had evil thoughts. He did not want to be raped by a 10,000-year-old tortoise. How dare you, you brat? Did you really think of me like that just now? I'm so angry. The Old Tortoise jumped up and pointed at Ji Yufei. He was so angry that his face turned red. You can stay here for the rest of your life. Me. The Old Tortoise threw the wine jar in his hand at Ji Yufei and then turned to leave. He seemed to be really angry. Old Tortoise, you bastard, let me out. When Ji Yufei saw that the Old Tortoise was about to leave, he stopped joking with the Old Tortoise and shouted anxiously. Come out yourself if you can. The Old Tortoise was about to leave. Wait a minute, Old Tortoise. I was just joking with you. Why are you so serious? Let me out. Ji Yufei analyzed. Me. The Old Tortoise could not be bothered with Ji Yufei and was about to leave. Old Tortoise, if you don't want to enter the Naraka realm, leave. Ji Yufei's magnetic voice suddenly came from behind the Old Tortoise. When the Old Tortoise heard the voice, he immediately stopped. He must enter the Naraka realm. The Old Tortoise turned around and stared at Ji Yufei with his head tilted. After a while, he suddenly smiled and said, Not only will I not let you out, but I'll also put something in to accompany you so that you won't be so lonely. Then, the Old Tortoise took out a fist-sized white jade divine cauldron and released a demonic shadow from the cauldron. What do you want? This time, Ji Yufei was really shocked. Chapter 457. As soon as the demonic shadow appeared, Devil Chi soared into the sky and a terrifying and evil aura filled the air. It was a powerful demonic soul of the demigod level released by the Old Tortoise from the white jade cauldron. The Old Tortoise had taken advantage of the night of the full moon to detain 7 demigod-level evil spirits and demonic beings on the terrifying savage ancient battlefield outside the inner world. These evil spirits and demonic beings were all condensed from the inextinguishable fighting will and divine thoughts of the countless immortals and true demons who had died on the ancient battlefield, and even the broken remnant souls. They possessed extremely powerful soul power. Not only did the Old Tortoise not open the ancient demon formation to release Ji Yufei, but he also wanted Ji Yufei to continue refining this terrifying demonic shadow. He did not allow him to rest and wanted his cultivation to break through again. The higher Ji Yufei's cultivation was, the faster he could refine the mountain and river cauldron. The Old Tortoise wanted to enter the Naraka realm as soon as possible and collect one of the 6 paths of reincarnation diagrams. The only way was to improve Ji Yufei's strength. Roar. The demonic figure roared furiously at the sky. The entire heaven and earth trembled under the roar of the demonic soul. Above the illusory figure, a monstrous demonic aura enveloped the heavens and earth. A terrifying aura spread across the heavens and earth. Old Tortoise, you. Ji Yufei's face turned green. He could not help but tremble at the thought of the pain and terrible torture he had experienced after the soul power entered his body. Even if his willpower was as firm as a rock, he absolutely did not want to suffer the endless pain from his body and soul again. That kind of torture was not something an ordinary person could bear. Even Ji Yufei almost had a mental breakdown. Hee. The Old Tortoise chuckled. Then, regardless of whether Ji Yufei was willing or not, he directly dispersed the terrifying demonic soul. Then, with force, he sent the endless soul power that exploded into Ji Yufei's body. War. As his soul power entered his body, Ji Yufei immediately howled miserably. Pitch-black demonic chi instantly enveloped him, and his eyes became pitch-black like bottomless pits. Strands of demonic chi seeped out of his 7 apertures. Ji Yufei directly fell to the ground, rolling on the ground and howling. The demon marks that had already hidden in the ground appeared again at this time, emitting a bright demonic light. The ground was as solid as iron and stone. No matter how Ji Yufei rolled or hit it, he couldn't damage it in the slightest. He didn't even leave a mark on the ground. The demon marks that the old turtle had planted on Gu Fei's body did not disappear. When Gu Fei's body was about to explode from the demonic soul power, those demon marks emerged from Gu Fei's body and suppressed the soul power that wanted to rush out of Gu Fei's body. Stinking brat, you can slowly enjoy yourself here. Ha ha. After Old Tortoise was done, he laughed and disappeared into the void. No one knew where he went. Swoosh. In the dim sky above the bloody savage wilderness ancient battlefield, a figure directly appeared from the void. The savage, desolate ancient battlefield was still incomparably evil. Blood-colored clouds drifted in the sky, and strands of yin-chi surged on the ground. Coupled with the endless number of ghastly white bones on the ground, it formed a scene that would make one's hair stand on end. It's really strange. Where did those evil beings and evil spirits come from? Old Tortoise stood in the void and lowered his head in contemplation. He really couldn't understand where those powerful evil beings went after the night of the full moon. He was very clear that the evil being that appeared that night was as huge as an ancient sacred mountain. Its strength was comparable to that of an ancient almighty. It was a terrifying existence that could shatter the sky with a lift of its hand and crack the earth with a stomp of its foot. If he hadn't escaped quickly, he would probably have died. Such an existence was absolutely invincible in this world where immortals and true demons were extinct. What else did they have to worry about? What else could threaten them? After the night of the full moon, peace was restored in the savage wilderness ancient battlefield. Those evil beings and evil spirits had all disappeared as if they had vanished into thin air. The savage wilderness ancient battlefield definitely had all sorts of unknown secrets. It was filled with evil and was definitely a dangerous place that even immortals and immortals were unwilling to set foot in. Outside the hell path, there were already terrifying evil beings comparable to ancient almighties. Wouldn't the hell path be even more terrifying? Old Tortoise couldn't help but feel a little uneasy when he thought of this. With his current cultivation and strength, it was absolutely impossible for him to fight against the terrifying existence of ancient almighties. Should he still go in? Old Tortoise was a little hesitant. The 6 paths of reincarnation diagram refined by the Buddhist Lord was not that easy to collect. Otherwise, the hell path of the 6 paths would have long been collected by someone else. How could it be his turn? However, the hell path is a small world refined by the Buddhist Lord. If I can collect this small world, even if my strength can't return to its previous peak, it'll be close. Old Tortoise mumbled to himself as he weighed the pros and cons. After a long period of contemplation, Old Tortoise's gaze gradually became determined. He must enter the hell path. How can he catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Old Tortoise finally made up his mind. After he made up his mind, he set his gaze on the towering pitch-black mountain not far away. It was so tall that its peak could not be seen at a glance. Old Tortoise came to the front of the huge mountain and saw that the entire body of the mountain was dark brown like dried blood. It towered into the dark sky and was very steep. It was impossible for ordinary people to climb it. On the mountain, there were many marks that were obviously man-made. There were gullies hundreds of feet long formed by sabers and swords, and there were palm prints and fist prints formed by the bombardment of fists and palms. Old Tortoise pointed with his finger. Kai. A dazzling finger radiance shot out from his finger. He wanted to see how hard the mountain was. Bam! The finger radiance struck the mountain in front of him, producing a muffled sound of impact. The incomparably sharp finger energy actually only left a very shallow mark on the mountain. Old Tortoise was shocked. The pitch-black mountain was much harder than he imagined. The dark brown rock was very special and did not seem to be ordinary. It should be noted that his cultivation and strength had been restored to the level of a demon god. The power of a finger was much more powerful than a divine weapon. However, it only left a shallow mark on the mountain. Old Tortoise could not help but feel shocked and incredulous. He could already see that the saber and sword marks, as well as fist and palm prints, were left a long time ago. After countless years, they were still clearly visible. It was hard to imagine how powerful the person who left the marks on the mountain was. What was certain was that the person who left the marks was definitely more powerful than an immortal. Old Tortoise soared into the sky. He wanted to fly to the top of the mountain, but the higher he flew, the more surprised he became. He felt that not only were there saber and sword marks on the mountain, but even at a height of thousands of feet, the mountain was still covered with saber and sword marks, as well as fist and palm prints, and holes. Soon, Old Tortoise reached a height of tens of thousands of feet. However, the pitch-black mountain was still full of man-made marks. Moreover, these marks shocked Old Tortoise even more. The higher he went, the fewer man-made marks on the mountain. However, the damage caused on the mountain became more and more severe. There were sword marks that spanned thousands of feet and palm prints that were as big as small mountains. Old Tortoise even found some broken magic tools embedded in the mountain walls. High up in the sky, he still could not see the peak of the mountain. It was difficult to estimate how tall the mountain was. It was like a giant pillar that stood between heaven and earth. Swoosh! Old Tortoise soared into the sky and broke through the layers of blood-colored clouds. After a while, he saw the peak of the mountain. Such a tall mountain was rare even in ancient times. Soon, Old Tortoise approached the peak. After he rushed through the blood-colored clouds, the mountain in front of him suddenly flashed with rays of light. The Old Tortoise was startled. It immediately stopped and looked in the direction of the flashing light. This was not a big deal, but it shocked the Old Tortoise. Its eyes widened and its face was filled with disbelief. There was a white skeleton hanging on the mountain wall in front of him. It was not a skeleton, but an extraordinary white skeleton. The body of the skeleton was crystal clear like divine jade, and rays of light lingered on the bones. The skeleton could definitely be called a divine skeleton. However, what really shocked Old Tortoise was not the extraordinary skeleton, but what was inside the skeleton. A rusty ancient sword pierced through the skeleton's abdomen and nailed him to the mountain wall. Fist-sized balls of divine light shone from the skeleton's head, abdomen, and limbs. Old Tortoise sensed the fluctuation of Buddhist power from the auspicious golden divine light. Yes, it was Buddhist light, and it emitted extremely pure Buddhist power. Surya! Old Tortoise was surprised at first, then delighted. His face was like a blooming flower in spring, and he smiled brightly. He went straight to the skeleton. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 7 Surya, it's done, haha. Old Tortoise danced with joy and laughed out loud. Legend has it that the ancient Buddhist lord cultivated 13 divine Buddhist relics. This unlucky monk cultivated 7 divine Buddhist relics. I'm afraid his Buddhist cultivation has already surpassed the realm of ordinary gods and Buddhas. The Old Tortoise was overjoyed and said such words. This unlucky Buddhist expert had been dead for God knows how many years. Even the ancient sword that pinned him to the ground was already full of rust and was about to completely decay. The Buddhist master's flesh and blood had melted, but his skeleton and Buddhist Surya remained. Even after countless years, the Buddhist Surya still contained extremely powerful Buddhist power. Buddhist Surya, Old Tortoise, have lucked out. Old Tortoise took out his stone turtle shell that could smash anything in the world, smashed the skeleton that was nailed to the mountain wall, and took out the Buddhist Surya. After taking out the Buddha relic, the broken god's bone lost its luster and dimmed. Then, it turned into bone dust and scattered in the air. Chapter 458. It had to be said that the primordial battlefield of the far west was truly too strange and terrifying. Even a young Arhat who had surpassed the realm of gods had perished here. It was truly difficult to imagine exactly what had happened here all those years ago. The pitch-black mountain seemed to be full of demonic nature. It towered into the clouds like a pillar that supported the heavens, making people feel a great pressure. After the Old Tortoise put away the 7 Buddha's relics that emitted vast Buddhist power, he continued to fly toward the top of the mountain. He faintly felt that there might be even more amazing discoveries on the mountain top. Soon, the Old Tortoise rushed to the top of the mountain. Instead of calling it a mountain top, it was more appropriate to call it a platform. The top of the mountain was actually a flat land with a radius of more than 10 kilometers. The Old Tortoise was somewhat surprised to see such a scene on the top of the mountain that was tens of thousands of meters high in the sky. The mountain top was flat and smooth like a mirror. There was not a single speck of dust on the ground. It was like a piece of black divine jade that glowed with a misty black light. On the ground, there was a huge swastika. The swastika was flowing with auspicious golden Buddhist light as if it was suppressing and sealing the mountain. In the middle of the swastika, the old tortoise was shocked to see a figure sitting on the ground. It was a skinny old monk in a kasaya with his eyes closed. "Why is there someone here?" The old tortoise was shocked. He knew that there was not a single breath of life within a radius of thousands of kilometers. It was a forbidden zone for life, a land of death. Swoosh! The old tortoise teleported in front of the old monk and stood in the void. His eyes emitted a bright divine light as he glanced at the old monk below. No breath of life, no fluctuation of soul. It turns out to be a stinky body that has been dead for God knows how long, the old tortoise muttered to himself. There was no one else alive here except him. Sigh. At this moment, the old tortoise suddenly heard a faint sigh. This made the pores on the old tortoise's body explode. His expression suddenly changed and he almost fell from the sky. Who is it? Show yourself." The old tortoise was shocked and angry at the same time. His pair of divine eyes swept back and forth on the mountain top. However, there was no one on the mountain top except for the old monk sitting on the ground. There was not even a ghost. Sigh. Another sigh sounded in old tortoise's ears. This time, old tortoise was really moved. The other party seemed to be nearby, but he could not find the other party. Could it be that the other party's cultivation was above his? Old tortoise could not help but feel a little nervous at the thought of this. He was ready to break the void and return to his inner world as soon as he felt that something was wrong. The peak of the mountain was empty, and it could be seen at a glance. There was no place to hide at all. Could it be that the old monk in front of him was haunting him? The old tortoise was bewildered. Then, he stretched out his right hand and slashed at the old monk below. Dazzling divine light seeped out of his palm and formed a blade of light. Like a heavenly blade, it broke through the void and instantly arrived above the old monk. Sigh. A sigh was heard. Then, old tortoise saw an extremely shocking scene. The old monk below suddenly moved. Then, the blade of light that he slashed out shattered without warning and dissipated in the void. This. Old tortoise could not see how the old monk made his move at all. It was as if the old monk had not moved at all. Old tortoise only felt a chill in his heart. Swoosh. Old tortoise was shocked to the extreme. Without thinking, he immediately retreated and rushed out of the mountain peak without looking back. He did not dare to stay on the mountain peak any longer. The old monk who looked like a mummy was too terrifying and strange. He felt threatened by him. The old monk did not chase after him. He was still sitting in the middle of the swastika at the center of the mountain top. There was no breath of life coming from his body. He was motionless like a mummy that had died countless years ago. What's going on? After old tortoise broke through the void and entered his inner world, he still felt a sense of fear and could not calm down for a long time. He was very surprised because he had explored this area before. He knew that there were a total of 9 mountains like this. They were distributed over a radius of thousands of miles and surrounded the Naraka realm. However, this was his first time ascending to the peak of one of the mountains. He found it hard to imagine that there was a swastika seal at the top of the mountain, as well as a shriveled old monk who looked like a dried corpse without any signs of life. Could it be that there were swastika at the top of each of the 9 mountains? Could it be that there was a terrifying existence like the old monk? Old tortoise faintly felt uneasy. The savage ancient battlefield was only a corner of the savage ancient realm. The savage ancient realm was huge, so huge that it exceeded the scope of everyone's imagination. It was a tiny world that was surrounded by 9 mountains. There were people guarding the peaks of the mountains. Old tortoise's expression changed. He knew that the legendary Buddhist Lord would not place the Naraka realm of the 6 paths of samsara here for no reason. Could it be? He suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that the Buddhist Lord was using the Naraka realm to suppress something and had even sent his disciples and grand disciples to guard it? In the northern lands, the ancient fire god had left behind the fire cloud palace in an earth fire vein to suppress the primordial fire demon in the earth fire vein. But in the far west, he had discovered the Buddhist Lord's Naraka realm. When Old Tortoise thought of this, he could not help but draw a cold gasp. The 9 mountains guarded the Naraka realm and the Buddhist light sealed the hell. Why did the Buddhist Lord set up such a shocking trap? After seeing the swastika and the mummified old monk on the mountain peak, Old Tortoise fell into deep thought. There was definitely a huge secret in the savage ancient realm. Old Tortoise returned to the divine palace in the sky and shut himself in. He needed to think carefully. The trap set up by the Buddhist Lord definitely had an unimaginable and terrifying plot behind it. Although Old Tortoise's inner world was filled with lush mountains and clear waters, and lingering spirit chi, it was not peaceful. Xiaoqing and Qilin Demon King were still refining soul power at the edge of the chaos. Although a year had passed, they still showed no signs of coming out of seclusion. The noise they made was getting louder and louder. Demonic aura surged into the sky and the world shook. In contrast, Ji Yufei's commotion was much smaller. The fiend soul had been scattered by Old Tortoise and soul power had been injected into Ji Yufei's body. Ji Yufei once again tasted the endless pain of having his soul stripped away, his flesh and bones mercilessly torn apart and pulverized. It could be described as hovering between life and death, living and dying to describe the torture Ji Yufei was experiencing. A year's time was very short in the eyes of cultivators, but a lot of things could happen in it. Just as Ji Yufei was suffering the extreme torture of his body and soul in Old Tortoise's inner world, in the north of the kingdom of Wei, there was a beautiful mountain forest. Several green mountains stood tall, surrounded by mist, and a 1,000-foot waterfall hung down from the mountain like white silk. Green water surrounded the mountain, and spring water flowed. Lush trees gave shade, and flowers bloomed like brocade. Birds and beasts walked in the forest, making the place more lively. Such a scenery might not even touch the edge of a spiritual land in any part of the Tenglong continent, but such a place was somewhat rare in the kingdom of Wei in the north. The north was bitter and cold. Although there were spiritual mountains and caves, such spiritual lands were very rare compared to other places. In the mountain forest, there was a palace looming in the mist. This beautiful mountain forest already had a master. There was a sect called Sunset Sect here. As the sun set in the west, a white-clothed figure walked on the mountain path directly toward the Sunset Sect. Before he reached the sect gate, someone walked out from the sect gate. "Who goes there?" The people of the Sunset Sect shouted. The white-clothed person did not stop and continued to walk forward. When the people of the Sunset Sect saw that the other party did not answer, their expressions changed. "Stop!" The people of the Sunset Sect shouted. Some of them had already reached for the weapons on their waists. They already felt that something was wrong. The white-robed man arrived in front of the mountain gate, and then directly attacked. At the mountain gate, there was a memorial with the 4 words Sunset Paradise engraved on it. Boom! In an instant, it shattered into dust. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Someone actually came to their sect and directly destroyed the memorial arch of the Sunset Sect with a palm. This person was here to trample on the sect. Me. A small sect dares to call itself a cave. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The person who came said disdainfully. He did not place the Sunset Sect in his eyes at all. "You're courting death." The people of the Sunset Sect were angry. This person was alone. Could it be that he wanted to fight the entire sect by himself? This was too arrogant. The disciples of the Sunset Sect who were guarding the sect gate all attacked. They took out their magic treasures and weapons and attacked the white-clothed person. Suddenly, the sect gate flashed with light and magic power surged. The white-robed man's face was calm as he stretched out his right hand. He stretched out his 5 fingers and grabbed forward. A giant hand grabbed all the weapons and magical treasures in his hand, and then he squeezed them. Catcher, catcher, catcher. All of the weapons and magical treasures shattered in the hands of the white-clothed man and fell to the ground. Then, the white-clothed man waved his hand and all of the Luoxia disciples at the gate were sent flying. They rolled on the ground, groaning in pain and unable to stand up again. "Quickly go and report to the sect master and the elders," someone shouted. More than a dozen Sunset Sect disciples rushed out of the sect gate. All of them angrily stared at the white-clothed person who was walking step by step into the sect gate. "Who are you? Why did you come to my sunset sect and attack people?" One of the sunset sect disciples who rushed out of the sect gate shouted in a stern voice. Remember, the person who destroyed the sunset sect is called Gu Fei. The white-clothed person pressed forward. His words were incomparably cold and emotionless. It made people feel suffocated. Chapter 459. Sunset filled the sky. Dusk was the most beautiful scene of the day in the sunset paradise. However, the sunset sect's entrance was currently in a state of mutual hostility. The atmosphere was extremely tense, and it formed an extremely discordant side to the beautiful scenery. It could be said to be a great spoiler. The young man in white, Gu Fei, walked forward as if he was taking a stroll. The disciples of the Sunset Grotto Heaven all retreated. No one dared to make a move. Everyone was shocked and angry. "How dare you be so arrogant at such a young age? Which sect are you from?" At that moment, an old voice could be heard from the front. Following it, an old man flew out from one of the mountains like a meteor. He instantly traversed a distance of over 10 li and landed in front of the entrance. "Gu Fei of the Taishan sect," the young man said coldly, as if he did not care about the other party. "The Taishan sect." The old man was shocked. He was not unfamiliar with the Taishan sect. It was one of the 3 great sects of the Tenglong continent. However, the Taishan sect was in eastern Qi and the Sunset Grotto Heaven was in northern Wei. The distance between the two was thousands of miles. Why would a young disciple of the Taishan sect come alone to provoke the Sunset Grotto Heaven? "Fellow Daoist, is there a misunderstanding between us?" The old man did not dare to be negligent. His expression became extremely serious. The Sunset Grotto Heaven was only a small sect in the Wei kingdom. It could not compare to a super sect like the Taishan sect. Furthermore, the cultivation of this white-robed young man named Gu Fei had clearly reached the void controlling realm as well. He was a peerless expert. The old man was very fearful of him. He wanted to resolve this misunderstanding. It should be known that the entire Sunset Grotto Heaven only had 3 masters at the Royal Void Realm. This old man was the great elder of the Sunset Grotto Heaven. He was at the 3rd or 4th tier of the Royal Void Realm. The head of the Sunset Grotto Heaven had broken through to the Royal Void Realm less than 100 years ago, while the other great elder was only at the 2nd tier of the Royal Void Realm. Even so, the Sunset Grotto Heaven was considered a large sect within 1,000 miles. Of course, this was only in northern Wei. In the entire world of cultivation, such a sect would not even be considered a third-rate sect. There is no misunderstanding. Today, the Sunset Grotto Heaven will be destroyed, the white-robed cultivator called Gu Fei said in a cold voice. His face was filled with killing intent. It was clear that he had already decided to kill. "Why is that? You must have a reason for wanting to exterminate my Sunset sect." When the Sunset sect's supreme elder heard this, his expression immediately changed. "If I, Gu Fei, want to destroy the Sunset sect, then I will destroy it. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" The white-robed young man, Gu Fei, continued to press forward, his whole body surging with magic power. "You." When the Sunset sect's elder sensed the surging magic power fluctuations coming from the white-robed cultivator Gu Fei, he couldn't help but be shocked. The left side of the white-clothed young cultivator from the Supreme Profound sect surged with a terrifying demonic qi, while the right side of his body emitted a powerful immortal qi. The appearance of the young cultivator Gu Fei had also changed. His left eye had become blood-red, emitting an evil blood-red glow, while his right eye was as clear and bright as the stars in the sky. The left side of his body was like a demonic body, while the right side was like a celestial body. Seeing this scene, even the Sunset sect's elder was shocked to the extreme. It was truly difficult for him to imagine how a cultivator's body could contain 2 completely opposite and extreme powers at the same time. How could demonic qi and immortal qi appear on a person's body at the same time? Could it be that the young cultivator in front of him cultivated both a demonic technique and a Dao technique at the same time? "What about you? Go on your way. The white-robed cultivator took a step forward and instantly arrived in front of the Sunset Sect's elder. He then stretched out his right hand and grabbed forward. Rumble! The void in front of the white-robed cultivator's palm shook. The white-robed cultivator Gu Fei's palm quickly grew until it was the size of a small mountain. It shrouded the Sunset Sect's elder in front of him. Under the cover of the big hand, a vast amount of magic power surged. The immortal Qi formed a destructive storm that rushed forward and shook the world. Peng! 3 weapons and magic treasures rushed out of the old man's body. They turned into 3 divine rainbows that bombarded the big hand. Boom! 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 3 loud sounds rang out at the sect gate at almost the same time. The magic power was vast and mighty. The big hand collapsed in the void and the 3 weapons and magic treasures were also knocked away by the big hand. A terrifying energy storm swept out in all directions. The 2 stone pillars at the mountain gate were immediately broken into several pieces by the overflowing power and flew out. The Sunset Sect's disciples who were watching the battle exclaimed and dodged far away. The white-robed cultivator Gu Fei's figure was as heavy as a mountain. He did not move at all. However, the Sunset Sect's elder was forced back 7 or 8 steps and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The people of the Sunset Sect were immediately dumbfounded. They were extremely shocked. Even the sect's elder seemed to be no match for this young man. This made them feel a chill in their hearts. The white-robed cultivator Gu Fei sneered and directly took a step forward. At the same time, he clenched his left hand and punched forward. An endless amount of demonic energy surged forward like a surging river. The terrifying fist energy was filled with demonic nature. It was as if a real demon was attacking. The demonic aura immediately filled the area, causing people's hearts to palpitate. The Sunset Sect's elder circulated the magic energy in his body and waved his hand to recall the 3 weapons and magic treasures that were knocked away. Then, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood on the 3 weapons and magic treasures. Buzz! The godly weapons were vibrating. A small knife emitted an incomparably bright light. It broke through the layers of demonic energy and slashed toward the white-robed cultivator. A purple jade ruler emitted a powerful spiritual energy that was as powerful as a mountain. It turned into a purple rainbow that swept across the sky and swept toward the white-robed cultivator Gu Fei below. At the same time, a red cauldron that was stained with the blood of the Sunset Sect's elder on the platform emitted a blazing light and swept toward the white-robed cultivator. 1 weapon and 2 magic treasures, under the full power of the Sunset Sect's elder, all displayed a terrifying power. The sky and earth trembled and flames soared high into the sky. You do have some ability, the white-robed cultivator Gu Fei sneered. He didn't withdraw his left fist. Instead, he lightly shook it and an even more powerful demonic energy surged out from his fist. Kai! 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 Kai, the divine saber that chopped down at the white-robed cultivator's left fist, collided with the demonic fist energy. Unexpectedly, the sound of a red-hot soldering iron dipping into cold water rang out. The dazzling blade quickly dimmed. In just an instant, it lost its spirituality and turned into a piece of stubborn iron that fell from the sky. Whoosh! The white-robed cultivator raised his head and his left eye emitted a demonic, blood-colored demonic light that shot toward the purple jade ruler that was falling from the sky. The demonic eye seemed to possess an unfathomable power. It seemed to be able to pierce through the void. The purple jade divine ruler actually shattered under the impact of the blood-colored demonic light. It turned into a sky full of purple spirit light that scattered in all directions. In just an instant, one of the weapons and magic treasures refined by the Sunset Sect's elder was destroyed by the white-robed cultivator. The white-robed cultivator Gu Fei displayed an incomparably powerful battle prowess. The vermilion flame cauldron spewed out a terrifying divine fire that swept toward the white-robed cultivator. At the same time, the mouth of the cauldron emitted a powerful suction force, trying to suck the white-robed cultivator into the cauldron. The white-robed cultivator, Gu Fei, allowed the cauldron to pull him away. The fiend celestial qi that surged out of his body blocked the blazing divine fire around him. Bang! When the white-robed cultivator Gu Fei approached the treasured cauldron, his right foot swept out, directly sweeping away the raging inferno divine cauldron that was spewing monstrous raging flames. Ah! The Sunset Sect's elder on the platform suffered a great impact. He spat out a large mouthful of blood and staggered backward. The two magic treasures and weapons that were connected to his mind and body were destroyed. The divine fire cauldron was sent flying. The Sunset Sect's elder's expression immediately became weary. The divine fire cauldron that was sent flying by the white-robed cultivator Gu Fei smashed into a group of Sunset Sect's disciples that were gathered at the mountain gate. Suddenly, screams and screams sounded everywhere. The divine fire cauldron was like a fireball that fell from the sky. When it hit the ground, more than a dozen Sunset Sect's disciples near the fireball were instantly turned into ashes in the sea of fire. The divine fire that the divine fire spewed out was extremely overbearing. It was as if it could burn everything in the world. As long as a person was touched by a little bit of the divine fire, they would be burned to ashes. The divine flame that exploded almost instantly burned the group of disciples of the Xia clan into ashes. Everything within a radius of 1,000 feet was scorched. Only 1 or 2 people who were lucky enough to escape the disaster were able to survive. The Sunset Sect's elder saw this scene and suddenly became extremely excited. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Whoosh! Another ray of light flew out from one of the mountains in the Sunset Sect. A powerful aura surged toward the sect. A middle-aged man wearing a daoist robe walked in the sky and arrived at the entrance of the sect in just a few steps. The Taishan sect has gone too far. The middle-aged Taoist obviously already knew what had happened. His eyes were filled with anger as he glared at the white-robed cultivator. Dozens of his disciples were turned into ashes in the flames, causing the middle-aged daoist to fly into a rage. Sect leader, be careful. This kid is strange, the Sunset Sect's elder said. His entire body was in chaos and his mana was no longer flowing smoothly. The dantian in his abdomen was emitting bursts of Dao power and mana to calm his chaotic aura. The white-robed cultivator, Gu Fei, did not speak. Instead, he responded to the middle-aged daoist with his actions. He looked at the middle-aged daoist, and the immortal demon eyes on his left and right simultaneously shot out 2 beams of destructive divine light, piercing the middle-aged daoist's abdomen. Chapter 460. At this time, Gu Fei was in the wild ancient region in the far west. He was trapped by the old tortoise in his inner world to refine the soul power of evil spirits and evil beings. He did not have a doppelganger technique. How could he appear in the territory of the Wei kingdom in the north at this time? Only Dongfang Chen, who had become a demon, would crazily cultivate this kind of evil method. If he wanted to improve his own cultivation in a very short time, the only way was to become a demon. The pressure that Gu Fei gave him was too great. If he did not become a demon, how could he compete with Gu Fei, whose cultivation had greatly increased? Moreover, his character was arrogant, and he could never be surpassed by Gu Fei. The combination of the immortal qi and the true devil qi gave birth to an unfathomable divine ability, which allowed Dongfang Chen to display astonishing combat strength. He used the name of Gu Fei to barge into the Sunset Sect with unparalleled strength. He easily defeated the most powerful existence in the Sunset Sect, a supreme elder who was at the 3rd or 4th heaven of the void-controlling realm. Dongfang Chen's strength forced the master of the Sunset Sect to personally take action. Boom! The master of the Sunset Sect shone with a bright golden light, as if a golden sun had suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. The vast power of the metal element surged out, and the power of the sun shook heaven and earth. The dazzling golden light illuminated the world and the mountains, as if they were dyed with a layer of golden paint, and the surrounding area was bathed in a layer of golden light. You're courting death. The sect leader of the Sunset Sect shouted and grabbed Dongfang Chen with his big hand. A golden primordial spirit hand directly appeared in the void, revealing a terrifying energy fluctuation, covering this part of the world. At this time, the master of the Sunset Sect no longer cared whether the other party was a disciple of the Taishan sect or not. If he dared to kill the Sunset Sect, he was the enemy of the Sunset Sect. There was only one way to deal with an enemy, and that was to completely destroy them. Swish! The destructive light that shot out from Dongfang Chen's demonic eyes and celestial eyes pierced the void and also penetrated the spirit hand that was grabbing down from the sky. Its power did not decrease in the slightest, and it still shot toward the abdomen of the master of the Sunset Sect. The light of destruction seemed to be able to pierce through all tangible and intangible things. It was extremely terrifying and possessed unfathomable might. The Sunset Sect master's face turned pale with fright. He hurriedly left an afterimage on the spot and dodged the attack. Even so, the two destructive lights still brushed past his body and left two shocking bloody marks on his waist. The Sunset Faction's faction leader sucked in a breath of cold air. His entire body felt cold. What kind of spell was this? It was so terrifying and strange that the clothes of the Sunset Sect's master were soaked in cold sweat. Watch out, Sect Master. At this time, the Sunset Sect's sect leader suddenly heard the Supreme Elder's cry of alarm. When he heard that, his heart immediately trembled, and just at this time, he felt his head tighten. He was actually grabbed by someone's fingers. Dongfang Chen suddenly appeared behind the Sunset Sect's sect master without anyone noticing and grabbed his head. The Sunset Sect master was immediately frightened out of his wits. Without thinking, he wanted to use his nascent soul to break his dantian and abandon his body. He wanted to use this extreme method to escape with his life. However, at this time, there was already an unfathomable evil power that enveloped him. His nascent soul was actually bound by this power, and it was difficult for it to rush out of his body. Raw. The Sunset Sect master already felt the aura of death. He used all his strength to circulate the metal element magical power in his body, and his entire body suddenly emitted an even more powerful golden light. Rumble, it was as if a golden sun had fallen from the sky above the mountains. The bright golden light was so dazzling that everyone from the Sunset Sect couldn't open their eyes. How dare you? The Supreme Elder of the Sunset Sect shouted with a stern expression. Soon, a clear light appeared from below. It was as bright and clean as the moonlight. It broke through the layers of golden waves and shone up. What's the use of struggling before death? Dongfang Chen's cold words without a trace of emotion came from the sky. Then, crack, the sound of bones breaking was heard. At the same time, two destructive lights broke through the golden light and shot down, blocking the bright light that shone from below. Sect Master. An inexplicable roar of grief and indignation came from below. The Supreme Elder of the Sunset Sect was so angry that he wanted to tear this young cultivator named Ji Yu Fei into pieces. At this time, the golden light that filled the sky retreated like a tide. However, it didn't enter the body of the Sunset Sect master. Instead, it was all swallowed by Dongfang Chen's body. You devil! The Supreme Elder of the Sunset Sect glared at Dongfang Chen in the sky. In his hand, there was a mirror that emitted endless light. It actually blocked the two terrifying divine lights that shot out from Dongfang Chen's immortal demon eyes. What? Dongfang Chen was very surprised. He didn't think that someone would be able to resist his technique. One should know that the destructive light formed by the immortal qi and the true demon qi could almost penetrate everything in the world. Dongfang Chen's 5 fingers had already pierced through the head of the Sunset Sect master. Endless spiritual energy was extracted from the body of the Sunset Sect master and was directly swallowed by Dongfang Chen. The vitality of the body of the Sunset Sect master was already gone. However, there was still a steady stream of spiritual energy being extracted from his abdomen. His nascent soul and nascent soul crazily collided in his dantian, trying to break the shackles of his body and rush out. Roar! I'll kill you. The Supreme Elder of the Sunset Sect made up his mind. He bit the tip of his tongue again and spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood on the ancient mirror in his hand. The 3 mouthfuls of blood were quickly absorbed by the ancient mirror. Then, the ancient mirror in the hands of the Supreme Elder burst out a dazzling light, as if he was holding a bright moon in his hand. Swoosh! The clear divine light soared into the sky, and unexpectedly shattered the 2 terrifying divine lights that shot out from the immortal demon eyes. Wherever the clear light passed, the void trembled, and transparent ripples that were visible to the naked eye spread out. The ancient mirror in the hands of the Sunset Sect's Supreme Elder displayed a great power. That ancient mirror was definitely a magic treasure that could not be underestimated. Humph! Dongfang Chen sensed the terrifying energy fluctuations from the ancient mirror. He couldn't help but change his expression. He coldly snorted and then directly smashed the body of the Sunset Sect master towards the divine light. He himself soared into the sky and dodged it. Swoosh! The body of the Sunset Sect master was swept by the divine light and instantly collapsed under the divine light. Even his nascent soul couldn't escape and disappeared in the divine light. Wow! The supreme elder of the Sunset Sect was stunned for a moment. Then, he let out an extremely mournful roar and soared into the sky like a madman. He desperately urged the divine mirror in his hand and shot it towards the retreating Dongfang Chen. The misty light emitted from the divine mirror was a terrifying murderous light. Even Dongfang Chen felt threatened, and he had to retreat again. Since I've already killed the Sunset Sect master, there's no need to entangle with this madman. I'll let this madman live and let him find the real Jiyu Fei. Thinking of this, Dongfang Chen no longer had any interest in fighting with the supreme elder of the Sunset Sect. He directly turned into a black and white immortal demon light and flew into the distance. "Where are you going?" the supreme elder of the Sunset Sect shouted. He held the divine mirror in his hand and chased forward like a meteor chasing the moon. The speed of the two immortal demons was extremely fast. Soon, the two immortal demons disappeared into the sunset. After the two of them left, the entire Sunset Sect fell into absolute silence. The hundreds of people of the Sunset Sect standing on the mountain were all like wood, as if they had lost their souls. They couldn't speak for a long time. What happened just now was too shocking for the hundreds of disciples of the Sunset Sect who witnessed this scene. The Supreme Elder and the Sect Master, who were usually like gods, were actually defeated by a disciple of the Supreme Mystery Sect called Jiyu Fei. It was really unbelievable. They couldn't believe it. It was unknown who recovered first, but then, the entire Sunset Sect was boiling. Just as the Sunset Sect was in chaos, a ray of light appeared in the sky. A powerful aura came from afar. Soon, an old man with black hair and a black beard descended from the sky and landed outside the Sunset Sect's entrance. Roar! Who is it? Who the hell dares to come to my Sunset Sect and cause trouble? At the mountain gate, the roar of the black-bearded old man could be heard. After Dongfang Chen used the identity of Jiyu Fei to cause trouble in the Sunset Sect, not only was the sect master killed, but even the strongest of the two supreme elders returned with serious injuries. However, just as night fell, Dongfang Chen's figure appeared outside the mountain gate of another sect thousands of miles away from the Sunset Sect. That night in the northern lands, within the borders of the Wei Kingdom, there was bound to be no peace. In just one night, 17 small sects within the borders of the Wei Kingdom had been destroyed. The Sunset Sect had only lost one sect leader and a few dozen disciples. They could be considered lucky. This set off a great uproar in the sects of the Wei Kingdom. All the sects were in danger. At the same time, they all knew that the person who had defeated 17 sects was called Jiyu Fei, and he was a disciple of the Supreme Mystery Sect. In the end, it even alarmed the Northern Wei Kingdom, a dynasty that had been passed down for thousands of years. The Northern Wei Kingdom's royal family sent out experts to investigate this matter. It could be said that thanks to Dongfang Chen, although Jiyu Fei had never been to the hinterland of the Wei Kingdom, his name had already spread throughout the cultivation world of the Northern Wei Kingdom. Dongfang Chen's move could be said to be extremely sinister. After he destroyed 17 sects in the Northern Wei Kingdom, he patted his butt and left, leaving Jiyu Fei to be the victim. It must be known that although those small sects were not considered powerful in the Northern Wei Kingdom, small sects attached themselves to large sects, and small forces attached themselves to large forces. Destroying these small sects was equivalent to indirectly offending the large forces of the Northern Wei Kingdom. Among them, the Northern Wei Kingdom was a superpower in the cultivation world. Against a dynasty that had thousands of miles of history, no one could be relaxed. Even the Supreme Mystery Sect, one of the three great Daoist sects, would not be able to get away with it. In just a few days, the entire cultivation world of the Northern Wei Kingdom knew that one of the three great Daoist sects, the Supreme Mystery Sect, had a disciple who cultivated demonic arts. Chapter 461. The storm that Dongfang Chen had stirred up in northern Wei under the name of Jiyu Fei had spread to southern Yang, eastern Qi, and the west a month later. The sun was shining brightly, and Taishan Mountain in eastern Qi was as calm as usual. On the 9 peaks of Taishan, the disciples of the Taishan sect were cultivating on the mountain as usual. From time to time, the figures of the youngest disciples would appear on Taishan Mountain. Before the disciples of the Taishan sect broke through to the realm of shedding mortality, they were responsible for taking care of the miscellaneous things in the sect. This was the rule of the Taishan sect. Otherwise, all the disciples in the department would be immersed in cultivation, and no one would take care of the miscellaneous things in the sect. On Taishan Peak, Taishan Temple stood at the peak. It was the most majestic temple in the Taishan sect. The atmosphere in the temple was a bit heavy. The head of the Taishan sect, Taoist Shentian, sat on the throne in the middle of the temple. On either side of him were the heads of the 9 peaks of Taishan. Of the 9 peaks of Taishan, besides Taoist Shentian, only 7 heads of the other 8 branches had come. The head of Tsuiling Peak, Jiyu Fei, was not present. "Brother, why did you summon everyone here?" Long Hongxue, the head of Purple Bamboo Peak, who sat below Taoist Shentian, looked up and asked. "Yes, brother, why did you summon us here at this time?" Taoist Xuanzang, the head of Full Moon Peak, also said aloud. Everyone looked up at Taoist Shentian. Taoist Shentian looked at his brothers indifferently, then said, "A disciple outside sent a message saying that there is news of brother Jiyu." "What?" The 7 heads were shocked when they heard this. They could not help but look at each other and see a trace of surprise in each other's eyes. Ever since Jiyu Fei had been invited away by the powerful demon, there had been no news of him. The Taishan sect had sent batch after batch of disciples down the mountain, but it was difficult to find Jiyu Fei. They had even heard about Jiyu Fei. It was not just the Taishan sect. Even the Shongqing sect and the Guangqing Celestial sect sent their disciples down the mountain to search for Jiyu Fei. Although Jiyu Fei was only Daoist Ku Rong's nominal disciple, the 3 great Daoist sects still had to put on an act since he was invited by an almighty monster. Although they might not be able to find Jiyu Fei, if Daoist Ku Rong asked about it, they would at least have something to say. "Where is he?" asked the Spirit Bead Peak's head Daoist Alchemy. He was obsessed with pill cauldrons and was very interested in Jiyu Fei, who had retrieved the longevity grass. "I heard it appeared in northern Wei," Daoist Shentian said. Heard. The 7 peak seats were all shocked. From Daoist Xuantian's words, they knew that the information regarding Jiyu Fei wasn't that accurate. "Junior brothers, your news really isn't up to date. Recently, a young demon appeared in northern Wei. He's the scum of the Daoist sect." Daoist Shentian calmly said something shocking. "Young demon? The scum of the Daoist sect?" The peak seats were shocked. Daoist Xuantian's words were too shocking. They already felt that something was wrong. "Senior brother sect leader, you don't think that person is Jiyu Fei?" Long Hongxue looked at Daoist Shentian and said hesitantly. "I just said that I received information about Jiyu Fei. That is the information." Daoist Shentian confirmed Long Hongxue's words. Hearing this, everyone fell silent and lowered their heads in thought. Finally, Shaoyang Peak's head Daoist Chaoyang thought for a moment and said, "Senior brother sect leader, I think there might be something else." "Yes, that's right. Jiyu Fei cultivates ancient martial arts. How could he become a demon?" Hearing this, everyone nodded. They all knew that the Green Spirit Peak was different from the other 8 peaks. In the Taishan sect, and even in the entire Daoist sect, they were different. The Green Spirit Peak walked the path of strength and the supreme method of becoming a saint. It was also the most difficult path of all cultivation methods. The message also said that Jiyu Fei not only destroyed 17 sects in northern Wei in one night, he also devoured their essence energy. His behavior is no different from a demon. Daoist Xuantian's voice was still calm. Everyone was shocked again. Devouring a cultivator's essence energy was a taboo of the righteous path. Essence energy was the foundation of cultivation. Whether it was the core of the path, the primordial spirit, or the nascent soul, they were all formed from the essence energy of the cultivator. If Gu Fei could devour essence energy, that meant he could also devour the core of the path and the nascent soul. This kind of behavior that harvested the lives of others and climbed over the corpses of other cultivators had already entered the demonic path. Such a person was the public enemy of the righteous path, and everyone had the right to kill him. Impossible, that person is definitely not Gu Fei, Daoist Chao Yang said with some excitement. Of all the people present, he had the most contact with Gu Fei. He could naturally see that Gu Fei was not the kind of person who would kill the world and be ruthless. I think so too. How could a disciple of the Taishen sect do such a thing that angers both men and gods? Someone is framing Gu Fei. The other heads said aloud. Gu Fei was a disciple of the Dao sect. Since he was not afraid of hardship and was determined to walk the most difficult path of becoming a saint, he would not choose the demonic path. That person is half demon and half immortal. I don't know where this master came from. Why would he frame Gu Fei? Daoist Shentian said. When the 7 heads heard this, they couldn't help but think that their senior brother had already determined that the person was not Gu Fei. Half immortal and half demon, devouring essence, qi, and spirit, could it be? Great Void Peak's head, Yushu Zi, suddenly said thoughtfully. He seemed to have thought of something. Junior brother Yushu, do you know the origin of that person? Daoist Xuantian's eyes were like torches. He had already seen Yushu Zi's expression, so he asked aloud. Yes. Yushu Zi lowered his head and thought for a moment, then said, I don't know if brothers and sisters still remember that half immortal and half demon, such a person of the demonic path, appeared 5,000 years ago, and that demonic person had a great relationship with our Dao sect. What? Everyone was moved when they heard this. What moved them was not that the demonic person had appeared 5,000 years ago, but that the demonic person was actually related to the Dao sect. For thousands of years, the Dao and the demonic had been like fire and water. It seemed that since the beginning of the world, the two had been mortal enemies. Once the two met, there would definitely be a great battle, and it would be either you or I who would die. How could the Dao sect have anything to do with the demonic person? The 9 transformations of the immortal and demon. Could it be that the person who started the massacre in northern Wei and framed Gu Fei was that person's successor? If he's that person's successor, how many transformations has he cultivated? Daoist Shentian also thought of something at this moment, and his expression became extremely ugly. What relationship does that demonic person from 5,000 years ago have with our Dao sect? Daoist Caoyang's personality was like a raging fire. When he heard that the demonic person was actually related to the Dao sect, he couldn't help but ask Yushu Zi excitedly. I've only seen a few words about that demonic person in the sect's ancient records. That demonic person is the greatest traitor of the Dao sect. Yushu Zi said something that shocked everyone to the extreme. Dao sect's traitor? Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in disbelief. No one had expected that the greatest traitor of the Dao sect would actually become a demonic person, an executioner who massacred the world. From Dao to the demonic. Daoist Shentian spat out these incomparably heavy words with great difficulty. What happened to that traitor in the end? Could it be that he was able to pass down his Dao teachings? Daoist Chaoyang asked Yushu Zi sternly. It was the duty of a cultivator to eliminate demons and protect the Dao. Yushu Zi glanced at Daoist Shentian and continued. That demonic person from 5,000 years ago was killed by an almighty from the east. Was that almighty someone from our Dao sect? Daoist Chaoyang seemed to want to get to the bottom of this. That almighty wasn't a senior of our Dao sect, but a family head of the Dongfang family. That family head's cultivation level was infinitely close to that of an immortal, Yushu Zi said sadly. How could such a person die? Long Hongxue asked. He asked this because if that ancestor of the Dongfang family was still alive, the Dongfang family wouldn't have declined. The Dongfang family was no longer what it used to be. Although it hadn't completely declined, it was no longer the overlord of the East. However, although the Dongfang family had declined, no one knew how much heritage the Dongfang family still had. This kind of ancient clan, even if it had declined, No one dared to look down on it, because no one knew its true strength. It had been passed down for countless years, and it had produced great characters that could shake the ancient and modern times. Could it be that those great characters really didn't leave behind any trump cards? In the Ting-Long continent, some sects and forces that once had outstanding great figures would leave behind precious treasures before they disappeared. In the history of the Dongfang family, there had been more than one great figure. Even if someone said that the Dongfang family didn't have any treasures left behind by the great figures, no one would believe it. Therefore, even if it had declined, no one dared to have any ideas about the Dongfang family. Who knows? I heard that the Almighty of the Dongfang family went to the southern wilderness not long after he killed the traitor of the Tao sect. He entered the 100,000 mountains and disappeared from there. He never appeared again, Yushuzi analyzed. In the Taishen sect, no one could compare with Yushuzi in terms of knowledge and experience. This was because before Yushuzi became the head of the Taishu Peak, he was the elder in charge of all the books in the sect. The 100,000 mountains. Could it be? Did he want to find the legendary ruins of Tongtian? Taoist Shentian, who was sitting on the throne in the middle of the hall, suddenly exclaimed. In ancient times, no one knew what happened that led to the extinction of immortals and mortals. Since then, there were very few almighty saints who could break through the void and ascend to heaven. Even if someone could successfully break through the void, they might not be able to ascend to heaven, wash away the aura of the mortal world, and enter the illusory heaven. It was said that in the 100,000 mountains, there was a path to heaven. As long as one's cultivation was enough, they could open the path to heaven and enter the heaven without taking risks. However, a legend was a legend after all. Did the Dongfang family leader from 5,000 years ago take the risk to enter the 100,000 mountains that were said to be able to bury immortals and gods just for a legend? Chapter 462. The Taishen Peak was shrouded in mist. The Taishen Temple was majestic and solemn. The Taishen Temple was an important place of the Taishen sect. Ordinary disciples were not qualified to enter, of course, unless they were summoned by the head. Taoist Shentian sat under the throne in the temple. On either side of the throne were the 7 chiefs of the Taishen sect. Taoist Shentian had summoned the 7 disciples. Junior brothers, what do you think of this matter? Daoist Shentian, who was sitting on the throne, suddenly asked after seeing the 7 chiefs talking to each other for a while. Long Hongxue and the others immediately stopped talking and looked at Taoist Shentian on the throne. Senior brother sect leader, I think we should send someone to get rid of that evil spirit. Otherwise, it will become a huge threat to our sect once it grows up. Jade Hollow Child said after thinking for a moment. The head of the Great Void Peak, Yushuzi, had once been in charge of the ancient books of the Taishen sect and knew many of the secrets of the Taoist sects. Among all the heads present, only he knew how terrifying the demon who had pretended to be Jiyu Fei in the Wei kingdom of the northern land would be when he really grew up. The head of the Dongfang family from 5,000 years ago was one of the most powerful people in the history of the eastern land. He was comparable to an immortal. Only such a person could kill the traitor of the Taoism. All those years ago, that traitor of the Tao sect had turned from the Tao to the devil, and he'd killed countless cultivators and annihilated innumerable sects and powers. He'd caused a terrifying storm of blood in the eastern lands by himself. How about I go? I want to see who dares to pretend to be a disciple of the Taishen sect and do such evil things, Taoist Zhaoyang said fiercely. He cultivated in fire elemental Taoism and his temper was like a raging fire. As long as he encountered demons, he would not be lenient. He would not stop until he killed them. Taoist Zhaoyang was the killer of the 3 great Taoism sects. He had dared to attack the demon lord of 6 paths and the great demon venerable in the southern wilderness. Of course, the demon lord of 6 paths and the great demon venerable who had appeared in the southern wilderness had not come in person. They were just clones. However, the fact that Taoist Zhaoyang dared to attack the clones of the demon lord of 6 paths and the great demon venerable at the same time was enough to show that he was not afraid of any demons. Junior brother Chaoyang. Daoist Shentian was about to continue. However, at that moment, Long Hongxue, the chief of the Purple Bamboo Peak, said, Senior brother sect leader, I think we should wait and see. We can't let this matter affect our plans. All the heads couldn't help but be stunned when they heard this, and then they nodded in succession. The three great Tao sects were jointly making preparations for a great matter, and everything else had to be put aside for now. Daoist Shentian nodded. This matter concerns the rise and fall of our Tao sect. We can't afford to make any mistakes. What does everyone think? Daoist Shentian swept his gaze over everyone. Senior Brother Long is right. I think we should just wait and see. Let's put the matter of the northern lands aside for now. They all agreed with Long Hongshua's point of view. After all, there was nothing more important than what the three great Taoist sects were preparing for. Yes. All right then. Daoist Shentian nodded and put aside the matter of Jiyu Fei for now. Not long after, several beams of light flew out from Taishen Peak and disappeared into the spirit peaks that surrounded Taishen Peak. The entire Taishen Mountain was still calm as usual. However, outside Taishen Mountain, there were many unfamiliar figures in the past few days. Jiyu Fei, who was far away in the far west, could not possibly know about these things. He was refining his soul power in the old tortoise's inner world, enduring what could be described as the extreme pain and suffering of a human. Jiyu Fei was sealed in the void within 100 feet of the forest. There was a demonic aura there, and there were terrifying demonic souls howling. The area within 100 miles seemed to have become a terrifying demonic prison, and the evil and murderous aura made one's heart palpitate. The demonic aura, as black as ink, surged and tumbled for several months. Then, rays of five-colored divine light shone from the depths of the demonic clouds, and a terrifying wave of energy surged out from the depths of the demonic aura. Rumble, the entire world was shaking, and the essence of the five elements gathered from all directions, gradually forming a stream of spiritual chi that was clearly visible to the naked eye. Swoosh! The old tortoise rushed out of the divine palace floating in the sky and came to the sky above the forest where Jiyu Fei was. His face was the color of a pig's liver, and it was extremely ugly. He looked around and saw that the essence of the five elements in the entire inner world had been mobilized, and it was converging toward the five-colored light that emerged from the demonic aura below. This was the essence of the world in his inner world, and now it was being crazily plundered by Jiyu Fei. The old tortoise was extremely flabby, and the muscles on his face were twitching. Jiyu Fei, you bastard. The old tortoise's eyes were wide open, and he roared. The entire inner world shook under his roar. The old tortoise looked as if he could not wait to kill Jiyu Fei. However, he did not make a move to stop Jiyu Fei from devouring the essence of the five elements. Instead, he directly shattered the void, opened the inner world, and rushed out. Out of sight, out of mind. The five-colored divine light was like a bottomless abyss, continuously devouring the essence of the five elements that gathered from all directions. Gradually, the demonic aura that shrouded the world was completely refined. The dazzling five-colored divine light shone in all directions. The demonic patterns that the old tortoise had laid on the ground seemed to have received a great impact, and all of them emitted a bright demonic light. The ancient demonic formation formed by the demonic patterns displayed an unfathomable power. The demonic patterns triggered the momentum of heaven and earth, and sealed the void. Even so, the ancient demonic formation could no longer completely seal the terrifying energy fluctuations that spread out from the formation. The trees within a radius of 100 feet were affected and all collapsed. The five-colored divine light was really too bright and resplendent. It was like a five-colored sun had fallen to the ground. An extremely vigorous wave of life was emitted from the five-colored divine light. Jiyu Fei frantically devoured the power of heaven and earth and the essence of the five elements. The entire inner world of the old tortoise was affected, and the power of heaven and earth became chaotic. Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King, who were cultivating in seclusion at the edge of the chaos space, also sensed this strange phenomenon and came out of their seclusion. When they saw that the person who caused the power of heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000 miles was Jiyu Fei, they were surprised. It was hard to imagine. Endless essence of the five elements continued to gather and were all devoured by Jiyu Fei. The five-colored divine light gradually became stronger, and it was so dazzling that Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King could hardly open their eyes. After frantically devouring for a full hour, Ji Yufei finally stopped devouring the essence of the 5 elements. The plants within 100 miles were all drained of their life essence and withered. The originally green forest that was full of vitality had all withered and turned yellow. Then, Xiaoqing and the Qilin Demon King saw a figure coming out of the 5-colored divine light. The 5-colored divine light receded like a tide, and in just an instant, it was all absorbed into the figure's body. The 3rd heaven of the royal void realm. Ji Yufei murmured to himself. In his bright eyes, a layer of 5-colored divine light quickly disappeared. His whole body, the breath of life, was extremely vigorous. With every step he took, the withered flowers and plants under his feet quickly recovered their vitality, as if they were injected with endless vitality. The vigorous breath of life was released, and the essence of life seeped out of his body. Ji Yufei's surroundings were full of vitality. Ji Yufei truly felt the powerful power of the 3rd heaven of the royal void realm. His flesh, blood, muscles, and bones were full of power. It was as if he could shake the void and crack the earth with just a lift of his hand or a step of his foot. In particular, the extremely vigorous vitality made Ji Yufei feel as if he had 9 lives. Even if his physical body was smashed by someone, he could still regenerate. This time, it only took him a few months to refine the demonic soul. It was less than half of the time when he refined the soul of the evil spirit for the first time. Swoosh! A purple flame brand emerged between Ji Yufei's eyebrows, emitting a purple divine light that swept forward. Then, the void in front of him shattered, and a side of the world appeared in the broken void. He directly opened the inner world, and it seemed effortless. Swoosh! The purple divine light was suddenly taken back by Ji Yufei, and the side of the world disappeared in the void as if it had never been there. Ji Yufei, congratulations on your great progress in cultivation. Xiaoqing and Ji Yufei were acquaintances, so he quickly went forward to greet him. However, when he glanced at the demonic pattern on the ground that was still emitting a demonic light, he immediately stopped in his tracks. Ji Yufei was sealed in a place with a radius of about 10 feet by the formation of the demonic pattern. He couldn't get out, and no one else could come in. When Ji Yufei saw this, the purple flame that had already disappeared between his eyebrows emerged again. Swoosh! A purple divine light shot out from the flame brand and swept towards the demonic pattern on the ground. With his great progress in cultivation, he wanted to try and see if he could break the demonic pattern laid by the old turtle. Just when the purple divine light swept over the demonic pattern on the ground, the demonic pattern suddenly emitted an extremely bright demonic light. Traces of Daoist rhyme spread out from the demonic pattern, and unexpectedly blocked the purple divine light. At the same time, Ji Yufei only felt that his divine sense seemed to be bombarded by a giant hammer. Stars danced in front of his eyes, and his divine sense was shaken. Deng deng deng, he took 3 steps back. Hiss! Ji Yufei took a deep breath and was extremely shocked. Not only could this demonic pattern condense the power of heaven and earth, but it also seemed to have unpredictable power. Old tortoise, you undying old tortoise, get the hell out here. Ji Yufei couldn't help but feel a little annoyed and shouted loudly. A pair of shining eyes swept around. Ji Yufei, my master isn't here. The 3-clawed dragon Xiaoqing said. Ji Yufei glanced at Xiaoqing and then said, since your master isn't here, then you can erase those demonic patterns on the ground. Don't tell me you don't know these demonic patterns. Actually, I really don't know. Xiaoqing said embarrassedly. Ji Yufei was speechless.